Should we give a quick overview?
Yeah, that's good. So we can help history, a brief history of the company, how we evolved and the different segments of company, what we do. That will be helpful.
Let me first just focus on what the key demand drivers are in our business and industry. We'll take it from there. Otherwise, I'll speak for the 50 minutes and there won't be any time for getting queries and questions. So fundamentally, Apar's three verticals, the largest portion of our business comes from supporting the power generation and last mile delivery of electricity. So that's the chain that most of our business actually comes from. If you look at the demand drivers that are there, the single largest demand driver is the addition of renewable energy and the change in the mix of energy production. So traditionally it's been hydrocarbon driven, largely coal, not only in India but for most parts of the world. And with all the climate change requirements and the ESG pressures and commitments which countries have made, that footprint is changing at the same time globally. So it's not just an India phenomenon, but it's happening all over the world. The more developed the country and the more the country's allocation of resources is going towards that, the process is being accelerated. So it's opened up business in places like the United States, Australia, Europe, etc., which were otherwise fairly saturated energy markets. Most of this is being driven by a combination of solar and wind, and also wherever gas has been found, addition of natural gas, because the emissions from natural gas are much lower than if it comes to any fossil fuel or coal. There's also a resurgence that is taking place in nuclear power, because that again is an emission-free form of power. Problem is the nuclear power plants are very capital intensive, very large in format. It takes a very long time to deliver. But the movement in that is towards more rapid deployment, smaller size plants, etc. So that's still to fully take effect. But the main driver right now is in wind and solar, which is where most of the expansion is happening. If you look at India, it's going the same way. The US, Australia, Europe also following in that direction. So that's one major demand driver. The second major demand driver is that transportation, particularly in urban concentrated areas, is becoming more electric driven, again for the same reason, that the emission is zero when you use an electric asset. So you still have emissions based on on how clean your power is, and because of the renewable power being added all over the world, that equation is also changing. So India, which was at 80% plus coal, so it's considered 80% dirty power, we are now at 70% and moving, to a target which will be, I guess, over the next 10, 15 years at, 50% or below. So you've got intercity trains, you've got intra-city, train networks in metros and suburban rail, etc. Everywhere in the world that's expanding. You've got public transport going more electric. I mean, your buses, like VSP buses are an outstanding example. They will have 100% electric fleet sometime in 2024, just next year. Then the next thing will be taxis. So all this public infrastructure where the government and the local councils have more control on, they may not be able to force you to switch to an electric vehicle, but they can force anyone who has to come to them for repeated, permits to operate, to change. So this is the second big driver, that's in place. The third big driver is the infrastructure that's required to support this. So you've got upgradation taking place right from the transmission lines of electricity being brought into urban concentration areas. So there's no right of ways which are available. So whatever existing right of ways are, you need to bring in more current on those. And then you need the distribution system within the city to get upgraded. Like for example, if you take your own building today, if you take, as electric cars are getting added, not only is the wiring required within the building, but the the connection of the substation within your locality itself has to be upgraded as everyone's requirement starts increasing. So the building code also has changed now. 1 in 5 parkings, all new parking approvals that are there, 20% have to have an electric charging infrastructure. So the whole infrastructure is being built up. From that, you also have the charging infrastructure. That means the last mile cable and connector which you would have to connect into vehicle. So that's another area where the growth is happening. Then, if you take the lubricant and the specialty oil side, you basically have transformer oil going into all these substations, and transformers which are getting added. You also have, with the road infrastructure having improved in the country, the amount of miles that a truck is traveling is much higher than before, because it's faster to deliver and it's more efficient. The turnaround times are much shorter with GST coming in and with the highway network coming in. So the lubricant demand is being driven, even though there is some cannibalization from EVs. The total lubricant demand is still showing a positive growth because the number of miles that are being driven is higher. Then you've got lubricants that are going into all this infrastructure equipment, which cranes, off-highway, the mechanization of agriculture, tractor population going up, combiners, harvesters, tillers. We've not yet reached a combiner stage, but the tillers, all these things are requiring lubricants. Plus, you have this China plus one with the manufacturing increasing in India. Every equipment that comes in needs a lubricant, to run it. It's getting more sophisticated because of the automation that's there. The wage inflation has been very high, minimum wage inflation. So every company is investing in automation, productivity. So all of this requires more sophisticated lubricants as your equipment starts getting more automated and sophisticated. Then you've got the other major play that's there is the whole consumption and transfer of data. So the largest providers or transmitters of data in the country are basically Power Grid and Railtel, because they own the real estate on which you can run these lines. So we have a product line which is the OPGW product line. So it's basically, if you take a transmission line, you'll find one wire which is the lowest wire, that's an earth wire for safety. So that earth wire used to be made only of steel. Today it still has a steel core, but it has a fiber optic running in the center of it. And that is the backbone of transmission of data in the country. So you have the Geos of the world and the Airtels of the world that actually plug into those networks. The data is really transmitted by these guys, not by the last mile is transmitted by all your mobile companies and ISPs and these sort of things. So we are one of the larger producers of OPGW in the country. We also have fiber optic cables and we have these hybrid cables. So as your 5G infrastructure increases, not only do you need more fiber, but you also need more copper to drive, the electrical requirements that are there of the towers. And what Apar specializes in is in these hybrid products, so you can combine telecommunication and power in the same cable. And worldwide, what's happening is that in many places around the world, the pipe infrastructure is owned by a third party, and the telecommunication company needs to rent that space. So suppose this is your cross section, you rent out the cross section which you are going to use. When you start combining products, you can shrink the amount. You don't have a separate wire running for power and a separate one for telecommunication. You combine it, it becomes more efficient to lay, and the amount of real estate, the access charges that you pay actually goes down.
So else it will be done underground.
It's not underground today, and the amount of underground cabling will increase like 10x when you start getting into the 5G infrastructure. To support that level of data transfer, the density of towers has to increase very dramatically.
So if it depends underground, why do we need to do it along with power cable? Like what's the logistics?
The underground or overground doesn't make a difference. You have to deliver both. There are so many equipments which are attached to each tower, so they need to be powered. Where are you going to get that power from? So, telecom company wants to run that themselves. Their own power source can actually run on their device. So it's just picking up in India, but a lot of infrastructure is going in the overseas countries where 5G has already picked up in a much bigger way, and the 5G is ultimately going to be very, very data driven. That's the delta as you move from 3 to 4 and 4 to 5 is not the quality of your voice call, but it's the data that you need to transmit through it. And then the last demand driver is really this whole Atma Bharat program which is in place, where you have defense, railways, all of these players picking up much more infrastructure. Picking up much more infrastructure, which is being manufactured here in India. So now, where does Apar come into the picture? Where we come into the picture is that for years we've been working on all of these applications with products to support the requirements as they come up. Not only in the domestic market but also overseas. The moment you go overseas, then you need to get approvals in terms of standards that are being used in the overseas market. So, for example, if you go to the United States, you will have underwriters approval. Any cable, just like many of you may have been following the pharma industry, there you have FDA approval. Without that, you can't sell anything in the US. Similarly, for any electrical product, you need to have a UL approval, which is underwriter approval. Similarly, in Europe, you have a CE approval. In Australia, we have Australian standards. So the different standards are there which one needs to meet. So even if you have the product, it needs to conform and be tested and certified to that standard. It will actually carry a number on every wire that you sell, because you can randomly pick up the sample, test it, and if it's not found to be conforming, then the number gets suspended, just like an FDA approval for drugs. So we have products that run through this whole chain. So just to give you an example, I said renewable is the biggest driver that we have. So if you take a solar installation, the solar installation has panels. So the panel has string wiring, what they call string cables, which are the thin cables that attached to every panel. Then from those panels, it goes finally through a network into an inverter. And then from that inverter, it goes into an electrical panel. From the electrical panel, it goes into the substation. So all that requires cables. Now when you go to the substation, there is a transformer in the substation, and what it fundamentally does is it steps the power up from the voltage level that it is generated at to a voltage level which can be transmitted. So once it's stepped up, in that you have a transformer, so that has transformer oil in it. Once it's stepped up, then comes a transmission line. So the length of the line and the complexity of the line all depends on how much you're generating, where you want to connect, etc. But you need a transmission segment that goes into a grid, or it goes into a distribution setup. Again, it has to be stepped down to be at a voltage level which can be distributed. And once it's stepped down, then you have a network of cables that go in. And depending on what you've stepped it down to, from there onwards, you can have 132 kV, you can have 66, 33, 11, etc. And then you step it down until you get a house wire that is at 220 volts. Correct. So the thing about Apar is that we play in every segment of, right from a panel, solar panel, all the way down to, the wire which can come to your house.
The cable, right?
The house wire, ekdam patla wala copper wire which is this. We produce all of the products that are, in this entire chain. We have different market shares and we have different complexities that are there, but we have a product for every segment that's in this. Now you go to the wind. In wind, just like you have string cables for solar, here you have a tower cable. It's a cable that runs along the tower of where the blades run on the top, right? So there's a longer tower in there. So bigger the turbine, bigger the blades, the longer the wire. Now this is a very specially designed cable because it has to manage tens of thousands of torsion movements. Every time the blade moves, the cable also moves. So it has to be able to withstand that. It should not crack either at the 2 points. So that's a real specialization at Apar has. We have over 70% market share in the country for a tower cable. Yeah. So
in India.
Yeah, in India. So we have, and now we start getting approvals because all the major players in the world are present in India. So you have Vestas, Siemens, Gamesa, Envision, which is a Chinese company, Nordex, which actually buys on behalf of General Electric. So GE is present here. They're the largest wind company in the world, actually. Wind turbine producer in the world. So all of these guys, so because of the India business, we are following the same model as we followed in transformer oil, where we started servicing the big transformer manufacturers in India and then got onto the global RFQs around the world. So that process is taking place. So even though we have this huge share in India, now slowly we've started exporting those products to their installations and factories outside India. Then when you come to nuclear, there's a lot of instrument wiring that's there. When you come to the defense, there's a lot of instrument wiring that's there. When you come to the railways, whether it's Vande Bharat or there's a huge amount of wiring. Vande Bharat is a distributed train setup. There's an engine under every bogie. That's why it can come in different formats. 6, 12, 18. It goes in these sets of 6. So depending on how much they want to run, on a particular line, what load they want to pick on a particular line. So we have the wires which are in place, for that. So in short, in each of these segments, we have some products or the other that are in place. And that's what gives us the confidence that the business over the next 10 years, there's all this infrastructure. It may take longer than that, but at least for the next 10 years, this infrastructure will continue to expand, not only in India, but the same phenomena to varying degrees is happening all over the world. So that's pretty much it. So each of our divisions is exporting approximately 50% of their revenue. Last year, 50% of the revenue was domestic and 50% is export. Some of the export markets, at least in the short term, are seeing a little slowdown. Like the US, for example, a lot of products are stock and sale there. So because the supply chain was so broken, people were keeping bloated inventory, 6 months of inventory. Today, many people have recalculated cannot need more than 60 days because delivery is not a problem, freight is not a problem, etc. So now you have this de-inventorization that's happening. Whereas the Indian market, because it did not really go through a distribution setup, as the demand is increasing, it's just going directly to EPC players and etc.
Just as we discussed the drivers, right, across segments, can you just help us understand, we have transformer oil, I think the largest is the cables and wiring, right? So how big is this segment and what is the market size in India and globally, and what is our presence, in terms of maybe market share or something, so that we can get a picture of each segment of the.
So the largest 50% of our revenues, almost 50% of revenues actually comes from the overhead transmission line business, the conductor side. Now on the conductor side, we've actually diversified the product portfolio. So if you went 10 years ago, we were largely just simple aluminum ACSR conductors. So today we have a range of products and we also have a turnkey solutions business. So for example, MSCPCL, when they want the power, many lines have already been reconducted. About maybe 30-40% of the lines are reconducted, the balance still need to be reconducted. So there we would offer an entire solution to MSCPCL to help them select the right wires, the design, what could go on existing tower infrastructure, what are the kind of connectors. So you work with the specifier to help them through this entire process. Even though it gets bid, because you worked with the specifier, you know exactly what they need. And you know what are the controls.
The specifications also in your favor, right?
So there are international specifications which are there.
Right.
So even though you may not be able to, as you help them build the plan, you understand the entire terrain of what is required. Which systems are, meaning which lines are being used, which areas are there, what are the
So they're carrying the recipe with you, so
So-
then you can cook it according to
you
that.
actually help them discover what is required. Because in many cases they don't have the technical competence to 100, or even if they do it, they need somebody else to ratify the whole thing. And then it has to go into an RFQ process.
So we are present in each of the segments, right? I think government had released one report of the transmission capex that will be required in around 2.4 lakh crores something.
Yeah.
So we are
The
present
number
in each of
keeps changing.
correct.
And
Yeah. So we are present in all of those HVDC segment, 400
Absolutely.
kV, 765 kV.
We are present in that for conductors as well as for transformer oil. We can do every single rating. We have an oil for every single type of transformer. So we have oils for traction transformers, which are used in the railways also. They require a specific type of transformer oil. So the way the business has grown is that every application ke liye, you end up making sure you have a relevant product. In the case of cables, because the companies, we follow our company's motto, which is tomorrow's solutions today. We've been problem solving for customers. So customer has a new requirement or a problem with their existing product. Then you sit with them and understand what the requirement is, design a product for them, and then deliver it. That's how we have thousands of different cable types. It's not that we came in here saying we want to design 100 cables for this year and 200 for the next year. As the customers had discussions, issues, problems, we worked on finding a solution for that.
So now there will be around four HVDC projects which will be laid in India. So we'll supply to those as well.
Yeah, I mean, they'll all be bid, so we will be bidding on every aspect of them.
Okay. These bids are taken by the EPC players.
So different people are bidding on different parts, no? Because there's, for example, you have, there's huge solar farms coming up in Rajasthan, right?
Right.
For one example. Then you have an HVDC line. That's a privately owned line. So it's going to go through a TBCB.
Correct.
Then each of those has substations.
Correct.
So those substations will be, the fellow who wins the substation job will then buy the transformer, and the transformer guy will then specify, or the substation guy will specify the oil, or the guy who's the final owner will specify. Like, so for example, for Adani, Reliance and all, we do a lot of condition monitoring for them on their transformers to improve the life of the transformer. So because we offer that service and they're used to our oil being there, they don't need to keep multiple inventories for top up.
How do we do that?
So we have
IoT devices there to track the oil level?
No, so you have, you draw physical sample, it comes to a lab, we run all the diagnostic tests. It's like a blood supply, you can't have an IoT in here. You draw a blood sample, you send it in there, you can do automated testing in the hospital or in the lab.
It's not possible to have
So you can have an IoT device that can measure some basic parameters, but here there are a lot of complex parameters to be measured. A lot of instruments are required specifically, like dissolved gases, this, that. So for example, we have something that runs across some assets of some of these big aggregators where we draw the samples, run the tests, work with them proactively to increase life. The one concept which in India is relatively, a few groups have understood it very well, like Reliance is one of them, where there is a total cost of asset. So most people in India don't understand that. Abhi kitne mein mil jayega abhi. Secondly, a lot of developers in India have developed assets which they flipped or want to flip. So they set the asset up. There's a huge asset aggregator that wants an annuity stream. And they don't want to build the asset. So they get all the government approvals, they build the asset. Then, the guys can come in and do a diligence ki kitna power aa raha hai, over the last 12 months. Based on that, they'll run a model, they'll value it and they'll buy it. So that's a bit different than, the person who ultimately owns the asset, if they end up looking at a total cost of ownership, then some of the parameters start changing. Or the kind of quality premium that you will pay.
Which will be the next biggest after this segment being 50%?
Then the next largest at the moment is our specialty oil division, where we do transformer oil, white and pharmaceutical, and the lubricants. But the wire and cable is the third largest, but it's growing at by far the fastest pace.
For conductor business, could you just outline what is the growth? Do we need to set up more capacity there?
So there is more capacity going in on the conductor side in two areas. One is there's a big expansion happening and a lot of allocation of money happening on the manufacturing and treatment of rods because of the business is moving more and more towards using alloys as opposed to. So it increases the life of the product, it increases the amplicity, the amount of current that you can. So if you go back to the very basic, equation, it's I squared R or V into I, So the voltage level and the more current you pass through, the more the power that is getting transferred. So in order to handle more power with the constraints that are there, lightweight, weight cannot change, the sag cannot change, and you want to carry more power. So we have formats that can carry from 10% more power to 300% more power on the same line, using the same infrastructure. And then you work with the utility in terms of, what they want, how much they're ready to pay, what the constraints are.
The conductor business will be overhead transmission.
Yeah. So if you want to understand the products then, so we have these are the straight transmission products. The capex is going in to do a lot of this alloying because we do 100% of alloying ourselves. That's how you can differentiate your quality, you can control your cost. Because you do it end to end, So we buy from Hindalco or Vedanta or Nalco pure aluminum, and the variety of alloys we make ourselves. Even Vedanta and Hindalco sell a few alloys, but they are looking at it from meeting a certain set of spec, right? Our conductor guys are looking at it from what the customer requires. So there's a big difference in terms of how you would actually run your business. If you want the best braking load and this and that to be delivered, all that information is fed through a complex system that Apar has, and they keep changing then the parameters that are required for the alloy.
So what's the growth outlook and margin outlook for this business?
So we've been we're looking at we've guided 25,000 rupees a ton across this basket. So see, I'll just tell you the product lines of it. So that's one product line. Second product line is copper conductors which were used for railway electrification. So that program is basically coming to a close. The basic railway electrification. But when one door closes, a new one opens. The new door that's opening is that where they want the high-speed trains to run, the current carrying capacity of the current copper wires is not adequate. So, for example, you have a Vande Bharat train, it can run at only 60%, 65% of its full speed today because there's not enough current that's being delivered. It can go to 165 kilometers. You can't run it today more than 90 to 100 on many lines, right? So then if you want to run it faster, you need to now change it to a copper alloy. And we're one of the few companies that has already developed it. We were pitching for it in the beginning, but because we were the only company in India that could do the alloy at that point in time, I thought it would be a single bid.
Who else?
We don't know who else, but we have all the technology, all the products. We started bidding on some of these where they need to reconductor the lines. Like this whole freight corridor which is coming up with all these new spec to run the trains much faster on the.
So currently there are no lines which support this high speed 160 km.
No.
How big this opportunity can be?
It depends on how fast the railways want to change. So what we are doing as a strategy is, on one side you want to have all the products in place. You want to make sure that you have the merchantability on the product. You can manufacture it and deliver it. And the third thing is you want to build all your capex with a very high degree of fungibility. You can produce A, B, C, So your capex is a little more expensive to begin with because you want, whenever you want more dimensions of freedom. So we did that earlier and it hurt us in the short term because we had the ROEs were not great. You ended up spending 20-30% more. But if if any of you followed this guy Simon Sinek's, the infinite game, when you change the horizon of time that you're looking at in your business, then the decisions you make, are a function of that. So looking at fungibility was a very important aspect if you looked at it in a bigger sense. And why I'm answering this is because the question you asked You don't know how soon it will come, but it has to come. I mean, you can imagine a Vande Bharat capable of doing 165, you're running it at 80 and 90 kilometers, you're running at half the speed. And the effect of turnaround times has been seen in trucks. See, what used to take 3 days to deliver to Delhi, you're delivering next day. And finally, when that full network is completed in the next few months, you'll deliver in 12-14 hours, right? So you can imagine the turnaround times that are there on the utilization of your assets. And the assets are getting more and more expensive because of inflation. You can't even put parallel lines, you can't build parallel roads. There's no place to do all that. So the whole game is a productivity game. So all the products that you need have to fit into that scheme of things.
How is my understanding there, like in those copper wires which will be required cable, like for every 100 kilometer, the X will be the cost. How do we
So
understand?
we still need to finalize that. And there's copper, magnesium, copper, silver, copper, selenium. So they're still figuring out finally what.
No, just to understand how big the opportunity is, like what will be.
So finally, the opportunity runs thousands of crores. Question of finally which lines, what speed.
Yeah, even not
Like,
getting to
today
that
you
point,
asked me, right? If you go with an ACCC on a particular, if an ACSR costs 100, an ACCC will cost you 300 to 350. It can carry 300 times the power that you have. Now the utility needs to decide. If I want to carry only 100% more, because I've done my simulation saying that Mumbai mein population will not increase beyond this much power is being transmitted today. I want to only double my power, not go to 3 times. So the whole system that you then design is based on what that utility dictates. So the capex will vary dramatically depending on the format that has been selected.
So for bullet trains,
You have to use silver, which is, you can imagine the price difference between magnesium and silver. So that's why I'm saying it all depends on finally. So bullet train needs copper silver.
so
Alloy.
there is no, is it some supplied by
We know that we can make it. We don't know who else can make
What
it.
sort of
We give-
voltage does this wire, can this wire carry? Copper silver?
So I don't know the exact. Meaning you can design it to run at. I don't know exactly the voltage level. That's a good question. I'll go and find out from a technical team members. But it's not really the voltage level as much as the amount of current that it can carry on it. It needs that much more current to drive the motor, right, at that speed.
One question between, so you got like 50-50 exports versus domestic. In the next 3 to 5 years, which is a bigger opportunity for you?
So depending on product lines. So what we've done fundamentally is that we never set a target saying we want to do 50% export. What we said is that here's the portfolio of products we have. How can we optimize the sale and value that we can get for the company for that set of products? So what is happening is that a lot of standard products we're getting better value when exporting them. And for some of these premium products which require a solution sale, we have been focusing on the Indian market and the subcontinent market, where it's easier for us to do the solution sale because you need to build a whole ecosystem. If I want to do this reconductoring job, I also need contractors who are trained up to do live wire. So we've trained up so many contractors over the years today. They all have to be certified. Because what happens that a line coming into Mumbai, you can't shut it out forever. So it's shut down for few hours in which the job is done. So it was a live wire, it's going to become dead and it's going to go live again. So there's a whole different set of protocols that have to be followed compared to you just setting up a new line which is a dead line.
Actually, I was thinking it a bit differently. So globally, the requirement for, say, higher power transmitting cables, higher quality cables will be much larger, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I was actually thinking that your premium products will sell more abroad than in India.
So the thing is that, to sell some of the premium products, you need to get plugged into that ecosystem there, the EPC players, the specifiers. So it's not. So, as they get used to dealing with you, as they keep coming, looking at your company, your products, this and the other, you start climbing up, that value chain. And one day it will happen.
What was this mix 3 years back? Exports versus domestic?
We were at like 15-18%.
Exports.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you've come up.
So,
Right.
which now to give you an idea of the opportunity, the Indian cable market is about 65,000 crores, right? 30,000 crores is light duty cables, house wires, and the lighter products that go into buildings, commercial, all that. And around 35,000 crores is the cable, the instrumentation, control, power, elasto for
All the
railway,
applications.
mining, all those, right? The US in 2021 imported $19.5 billion worth of cables. That was the import bill that they had. Now, so that's only one country. Then Australia, most of these places, what's happening is that as the requirements are going up, there is an increase in capacity taking place locally because everybody has a localization program. But then you've got to see how easy and practical it is for you to set up the factory and man the factory. Because manning is another very important thing. People don't necessarily want to work in a factory.
They don't want to work here in India.
So there are those factors which are in place. So the markets which we are targeting is the US is one very big market because ultimately we have a very strong renewable portfolio, whether it's solar, wind, and the whole evacuation system from there. If our guess is anybody's guess, but our sense is that it will have one of the highest percentage of renewable powers given the nature of the country, size of the country, and the resources that the country has. The same thing with Australia. Australia will go way ahead of anybody else. Huge space, and because it has such a big mining industry, there is a lot of pressure on mining to clean up their act. So they need to come up with whatever they still have to mine. So whatever else is there which can be least carbon footprint is what is coming up. So they want to go to 80% renewable power.
How much benefit have you got out of this US capex boom that has been going on for the last?
So I think the capex boom is just actually starting. You see the infrastructure bill just been passed, and there are some subsidies and things which are supposed to go in. That whole system is still getting developed and set up. In the US, unlike other places, it's all privately done. So there may be a subsidy or something delivered, but everything is private enterprise. So if you see three things, which are the sort of restraining factors right now in the US. Number one is that the supply chain, there's too much inventory there and there's too much cost of supporting it, right? The rental is there, your interest cost, cash block, and you don't need to carry 6 months of inventory when the supply chain has got streamlined. 45 days, 60 days, 90 days, is more than adequate. So there is one de-inventorization that's happening just to bring it in line. The second thing is that some of the developers, big developers, are deferring or spreading out their assets because they're expecting interest rates they're already kind of topped out, they're expecting it to fall. So the cost of funding of some of these, where you can get funding for multiple years, the ultimate cost is a material cost. Your debt service ratio, all of it changes.
Yeah.
We originally started when interest rate was 2%, and now you're at commercial maybe at 7, maybe 6, and longer term means it's even higher given the duration. So if you're going to do 200 megawatts, you may split it into doing 50 today, 50 next year, 50 the year after. You'll do 200, but it's in your hand, right? This is not like Mr. Modi has an election to face in 2024. So it's not करने का ही है. It's based on it's based on individual enterprise, what's affordable, what they can do, etc. So, what we see fundamentally is so that's one. Interest rates is the second one. The third one is, I guess, with some of the collapses that have happened in banks and things, debt equity also is changing a bit. If it was people are ready to fund 1:4 or 1:3, today they want a better cover or slightly safer cover. They want more skin in the game of the developer in there. So some of these dynamics are playing out. But because we deal with, we are in touch with many utilities and EPC players, the whole the demand still seems to be intact because the goal that they need to get to has not moved.
The entire, जो Maui में fire हुआ था, that entire thing is a distribution infrastructure problem, right?
Yeah.
The whole distribution infrastructure in the US is creaking. power.
So what's happened there is that this is a classic case where they've taken advantage of the high quality of product that they put in initially. So if after the World War, if you just, sorry if I'm going down history a little bit, but during the World War and stuff, right? If you see the American standards, they're called ASPM. They're American Military Standards.
So what is it called?
It's AS, so American ASPM. That M stands for Military Standard. So they had a lot of military, a lot of research basically was finally funded towards military related activities and things, right? And then these standards were once upon a time extremely high standards, and the adherence to standards also were very high. So the kind of quality of product that went in for very basic things. Took the car, you take a refrigerator, there's still Frigidaires that are running, for 30 years, 35 years because everything was over designed. So these conductors, cables and all also, they were designed for a life of 30, 35, 40 years. They're running for 60 years now. When was World War II? A lot of things went in the 40s and 50s, up to the 60s in the US. So now it has started creaking because there is a finite life at the end of the day. So in Texas, they had some snow that fell on some of these conductors, and the whole conductor and the pole and everything collapsed. So that portion is not even factored into this equation. You're just looking today at networks that are being built for evacuating alternate power.
Yes.
So that is anybody's guess, because again, it's utility companies that own that infrastructure, and whether the government is going to help them, to do the funding or not,
So two things. Your current capacities across all your segments can take you to what kind of revenue? Of course, given the realizations keep changing, but ballpark. Or you need to then.
So we are putting in. We've got a 400 crore capex that's ongoing right now.
And how much is completed
that?
of that?
So it'll get completed by the middle of 2024. So, a lot of equipment has been ordered today. The delivery times of equipment they're improving, but not improving much. So it's a much longer cycle than before. And in most of these cases, you have a 1:6, 1:10 kind of ratio. So 1:8 is a very easy number to take. So you put in this 400 crores, you can get up to 4,000, 5,000 crores or more revenue.
Which space, like out of the three segments, which are we putting?
So we're putting on the conductor side, there's a whole lot of money going in on rod manufacturing, because then that services the conductor business and the cable business. In the US, for example, all the cables are on a certain alloy. It's an 8,000 series alloy. We make that in our conductor, we roll that those rods and then send it to the cable business, wired rods, strands, etc. So that's one portion. The cable is receiving another big chunk. About 250.
About 2/3 would be cable. 1/4 would be conductor.
No, 1/3 is conductor. The oil side is relatively not very big. Coming within the depreciation of the.
And the second
How do you differentiate between
is
conductor and cable?
Sorry?
What's the difference in the conductor and cable? Because in the conductor you mentioned it's over a transmission cable. So
Without insulation.
Okay.
So when you add insulation to
When you
conductor,
come to metal processing, right?
Good.
It's the same. Once you develop capability of alloying, you can produce different types of
and the
alloys, different
insulation
types
is
of
done by
things.
us in
And on the same rolling mill.
the polymer.
part of manufacture.
See, that is the biggest strength Apar has. There's no company else in the world that has this mix of conductor and cable. Other than Southwire in the US, there are some Chinese companies like ZTT and all which are there. But if you take in India, for example, our main competitor here is Sterlite. They have a very tiny cable business. And they do high tension cables, right? So most of it is aluminum anyway. They don't have a big copper
KES
expertise.
would be all underground, right? He doesn't do anything.
They don't do conductor, they do only cable.
Only cable.
Polycab does conductors, does cables and not conductors. So, and especially when you get into alloying and stuff, they haven't invested in alloying capability. So KVI, for whatever they want to export to the US, or Polycab, is buying the rods from Hindalco. Our quality department doesn't clear Hindalco's rods. They say, no, we will make our own rods because of the following reasons. And the feedback that we have from some of the end customers is that our product quality meets their requirements.
The second question you mentioned, what you guided was 20,000, 25,000 EBITDA per ton. That is at the company level or individual segments? Conductor level.
25,000.
What is ongoing? If you can mention.
So
But we saw last few quarters.
they were extremely high. So see, the difference that was there is that when a crisis takes place or when difficulty happens, there is pride to safety. So sometimes your reputation and all that has to finally help you. So when you don't know whether delivery will happen or not, you have a relationship with a particular supplier, you know that they're reliable, etc., etc. Then we were able to pay a premium, for it. In previous periods, we had a problem with freight. The freight went up dramatically. So some of the guys wanted a fixed DDP price. Then the freight fell. So what money we lost before, we actually gained more, not per unit, but because the volume had increased of what we were exporting. You see the export numbers, how that has changed over the years. So we lost money earlier, then we gained a little bit on that front. So this 25,000 is a pretty steady state kind of number. We also expect that, as the Indian business continues to grow, the price pressures or competitive pressures here are definitely higher.
Do you think the historical numbers of 12, 13 we used to go is?
Yeah, because of the mix of product. Because we've got
Premium product.
we all so this includes, for example, the optical wire, optical ground wire, right? OPGW has so the whole. If you look at on our website, we've got the presentation. And it takes you through the entire journey of how this conductor business has transformed itself. It's a different animal. It's moved from a cat to a leopard or it's a different animal altogether. And also we were facing a big problem. We invested a lot of money and capability on building our turnkey business because we are a specialized turnkey company only. We don't compete with Kalpataru or with KEC or L&T or Tata Power on a standard job because
Since how long have you been investing time and money both, into converting Apar into this 2.0 avatar that we are seeing right now, honestly, or it just
so
happened?
it's taken about 10 years. See, we had
You
products
envisage
ready.
this shift will happen.
Yeah. So, the whole actually it comes from the philosophy of the company. Particularly that was set up by the previous generation, that is my father's generation. He believed very strongly in terms of the touch time that you spend with your customers. And he didn't believe in, just developing products and services just like Google, for example. They prepare something, invest tons of money and they create a whole new segment, right? So, we have limited money, limited time, limited capability. So the whole idea was to focus on customers. What are the solutions that customers require? How do you get a customer to run their business better? To solve the customer's problem. So many of these customers were telling us for a while, but the market had not matured large enough for it to reflect in the numbers. And we just expense all our R&D. We don't capitalize nothing. So a lot of samples prepared, testing done, this, that, all kharcha all gone. So these UL approvals were there. Now when the US market opened up, then lo and behold, we had 18 UL approvals. The next Indian guy had 5. So not that they can't get 18 and they're all getting there, but you're off the block much faster than anybody else. When this copper thing came out, we had envisaged that India is going to go electric. Mr. Modi and team are a different execution animal altogether compared to, this is Vajpayee's project. It is not Mr. Modi's project, but because of reading the animal in terms of, the executing capability, we put in the largest capacity. We had 5x the capacity of the next guy for producing. Others expanded on the way, but off the block, we were the big daddy from 0 capable of running at 100, when others were at 10, 15, 20. So some of these things have happened where, you made those investments, but there needed to be a time for and a market to accept. Like this HTLS, we've been working on it for 15 years. Now the market is really maturing because the consumption of electricity, ये तो कुछ नहीं है. We just wait electric cars, electric buses.
Now that you're talking peak deficit numbers being
Yeah, so
it's a different thing altogether.
solar was going on. We had the cables and capability when it was at 12 rupees, it's not viable to do it at a big scale, right? Moment it started coming down to sub 4 rupees, then the market grows. So sometimes, so those are the investments which we
In
made.
every segment, what would be your approximate? How many competitors would be there? You would be facing in every tender?
So it changes in the sense that competitors, India mein, one of the things that we are very cognizant of is that once you define a market and been successful in some market, there'll be 5 guys who want to jump in. So, except that as you go to
serious for you who have the capabilities.
So on the conductor side, you've got Sterlite is a very strong competitor. They also have an advantage because they have a grid solutions business, so they can use their own conductors and their solutions, for their own turnkey work. But we are larger than them, and we have a much wider range of products than them. Like they don't do copper products, for example. So we do a whole range of copper products. On the cable side, there are very strong competitors. There's Polycab, there's KEI, there's Havells, there's RR, Phenolics. Now RR, Phenolics are much more on the light duty side. House wires and NDC, they're very strong in that. KEI is a full range of product, Polycab also has a full range of product, but they're very focused on the power cable side. Whereas, they have less of a solutioning mentality than we have. So we have much more specialty cable products. But their margins are very strong because of the brand value of the FMEG part of the.
None of these have full in-house conductor and cable, like total.
No, they do, but they don't have because of our heritage of the conductor business and our capability of alloying, we are head and shoulders above them on the alloying capability. And when you use alloys for your conductors also, for your cables also, then we definitely have an advantage in that. We also have the best compounding capability, which is a legacy that we managed to hang on to a little bit of that when we had a polymer business. So we are more advanced than any of these guys on the polymers that are required for specialty
cables.
So that's how we have more variety. When a customer asks you to develop a specific type of cable, you need the alloy, you need the conductor, and you need the insulation. So you can always buy it, but the moment you go in to buy something from a third party, they charge you a much higher value.
Just one question on industry, like now the government is targeting to reach 500 gigawatt of renewables by 2030. And for that they have announced like roughly 2.4 lakh crores of transmission capacity will be required. Of that, how much will be relevant to our segments for wiring cables?
So there is a lot of stuff that's available in the annexures on the presentation. If you go through that, you'll find a ton of information coming
That
up.
will have this.
There's a bunch of stuff. Yeah. And Ramesh is updating it also. So in the course of the next few days, you updated it.
Solar and what is per megawatt, whatever not the transmission part, but the that is the infrastructure at the site. Kind of cable requirement will be there for cost of per megawatt.
So I think it's like but it goes up to the total is a double-digit percentage. Solar में ज़्यादा लगता है
Of the cost
compared to wind. Yeah. Because wind में there's a lot of cost in the blades and parts and all that stuff. But in solar there's a lot of cables required for doing the evacuation, inverter to panel to substation. Density will be more.
Thanks.
Oh my God.
Have you spoken to him?
Yeah. This is
Yeah, good morning. Good morning, everyone. So, hi, good morning. So, if it's acceptable to everybody here, maybe we'll spend about 15-20 minutes just giving you an overview of what the key drivers are to the business. Sure. And where Apar kind of sits on, with respect to the drivers, of the market. And then, different people may have different knowledge of the business. You can just open it up to questions. So, if you just look at the key drivers of Apar's business, fundamentally, the largest play that we have is in terms of delivering power from generating source, all the way down to the consumer. So we have a play in that entire chain with the three business verticals that we have. So I'll tell you the key drivers that are there. So by far the largest driver is this whole addition of renewable energy that's taking place. There are commitments and standards that different countries around the world have made, and depending on how much they want to deliver on those and the resources which they have, the implementation is going on. So you are finding a lot of the G20 countries which are actually leading that effort because they have the financial muscle and capability of implementing. So a lot of solar installations coming up, a lot of wind installations coming up. Then wherever gas is available, gas is also classified as being greener sort of power because it has significantly lower emissions compared to coal. And then there will be a resurgence of nuclear power taking place because again it has very low emission. So there is a disposal issue, but it's quite small relative to the amount of power that's generated. And safety barriers, are getting overcome, through various technology improvements, etc. So you'll see that also picking up. So that's one really big driver. Second driver is, the whole evacuation that's happening from these sites. So you generate that power, it needs to be evacuated until it gets into a grid or a system which then ultimately is available to the consumer. So that's where the conductor piece, comes in. The third thing is that public mobility and is dramatically changing. So you've got a lot of investment happening in terms of trains because again they run on electricity, very low emission. So there's intercity networks being improved, not only in India but in many parts of the world. Then intra-city means within the city, so suburban, metros, that sort of stuff. And then there will be a move in different places it started where public transport is all moving electric. Like in Mumbai will be the first city which will have a full electric buses by sometime in 2024. So many countries are moving in that, or cities are moving in that direction. Next will come the taxis. So wherever the city or the government has a control on permitting, it's much easier for them to enforce. Like how we went all CNG, all the CNG will move to electric. Next step. So that's so that piece. So along with that comes what your Vande Bharat, your trains, the wiring that goes into coaches, locomotives, the bus wiring for electrical buses. There'll be two-wheelers. So commuter traffic, will start moving a little bit more electric than IC engine, etc. So that's that mobility piece. Then you've got this whole Atmanirbhar Bharat, piece in there, where you've got defense and you've got many areas where the local manufacturing content is being increased. So that's resulting in more capital goods being manufactured locally, and you may have this whole manufacturing infrastructure which is increasing. So whether you call it China plus one or you call it whatever the local content is. Like, so if you go on the GEM portal, which is in all the tendering that the government is doing, one thing the government has done is they moved a huge amount of purchase onto the portal, GEM portal, where it's auctioned. And there you have also different stages in there, depending on the local content that you have. So all of these things are then pushing finally towards, more production happening, in the country. So that is helping the cable side as well as a lubricant side of the business, where, you've got more equipment going, capital goods going in, more manufacturing, which means more moving parts, more lubrication, requirements taking place. And then you've got the highway infrastructure, the port infrastructure. So the equipment that are required to deliver the infrastructure also has a. You can just move that.
Yeah, sure.
How are you, Bharat? there's a whole infrastructure that's to build that infrastructure. There's a whole lot of capital goods that are there, right? From cranes, earth moving equipment, dredgers, tunnel boring machines. So all of these also require lubricants and to some extent cables. Then you got this telecommunication side that's happening. So for the amount of data that's being moved, there is specific infrastructure that's going in on the data side. And so as far as Apar's products are concerned, one is what is called an OPGW, which is an optical. So if you take a transmission tower, right? You've got all these conductors on the top, but you find one wire a little bit below, which is a ground wire for grounding the electricity, right? So that used to be just pure steel once upon a time. It's replaced today with a steel core that has fiber optic running through it, and these are very high capacity, data transmission, cables which run actually through that. So the largest, for example, the largest transmitters of data in the country are RailTel and PowerGrid. And all these Geos and Airtels and ISPs and all, they all plug into the basic system that is there that these guys are having. They are not heard by anybody because you are dealing with the provider. So all transmission lines, the earth wires are slowly getting converted to these data products. Then you've got this whole 5G thing. It's just starting in India, but it's progressed more overseas, which is driven by the density of the towers. So it's like a 10x. It depends on what you want to finally deliver and how spread out your customer base is, that you want to deliver at higher speed. So the tower density is increasing. So with that tower density, you require the interconnectivity between towers has to be fiber if you want to deliver it at that speed. And you need instrument control equipment, etc., which are based on that tower. So there's hybrid products which are coming up. And that is one advantage that Apar has. We're the leader in these hybrid products. So you combine copper and telecommunication in the same wire. So there are some advantages with that. India, it's a little bit less, but as you go overseas, it's significant. Number one is that the laying costs are much lower. You lay one time, not two times. Right. Secondly, the infrastructure is also owned very often by a third party, and there you pay for the volume that you rent the volume, because that wire, that pipe is available for various things. Right? It's owned by somebody. Somebody else is actually putting the wire through it. Like an AT&T is hiring somebody's pipe, for example. So you're paying for the volume that's in there. The moment you hybrid the product, the volume goes down. So otherwise you'd have a separate wire, electric cable and a separate telecommunication. So these are the sort of basic drivers that are there of the of the market as such. And we have actually a role to play. Our product profile really fits into. So we've designed the product profile and solutions that we have that meet the requirements of all of these areas. So if, for example, you take the renewable energy side. So you take a solar panel, for example, right? It starts off with solar panels. So we have a set of string cables that connect the panels to the inverter. You have a harness in place, which is the framework in which the wires are done. So either you can have a wire that's drawn to a connector, each individual, or you build an array. So if you build an array, it becomes more complex. It makes sense for you to do the harnessing in a factory as opposed to do it on the site. So we have those cables. We have the harness for solar, right? We have all the cables that go from the inverter to the panel to the substation. Then in a substation, you have a transformer which steps up or steps down the power. So we have transformer oil that goes into that. Moment you step up the power, it has to be transmitted. So we have the full range of transmission solutions in this. And then it goes closer to the customer or the consumer or set of consumers. So again, you have to step it down to a usable voltage level. Some of these are at 400, 220, 765 depending on the line. So you step it down finally to 66 or 33 or 11 kV. And then from there it starts getting distributed until it reaches 220 volt, which is what a consumer will use, or a 380 volt to 440 volt, which an industry would consume. So these are all the products which we have in there. On the electrical consumption side, what is happening is that because the electrical intensity is increasing, and it will increase asymmetrically more in high population urban areas, because there your transportation will happen, your buses will come in, all of this being electric, the amount of electricity required per capita in the city is increasing, and the right of ways are limited. So it means you have to now transfer more power using the existing infrastructure. And that is where the conductor turnkey solutions start coming into the picture. So we have a full range of products which, based on the design requirements that a utility would have, we work with them to figure out what is the best option. So you can transmit from 15% more power to 300% more power using the existing infrastructure. I mean the same tower and the same clearances and permissions that the utility has, the amount of SAG that they have. And that business we do supply, but we are the largest and the most specialized in the country in terms of providing the solution. So right from design to final delivery and proving to the utility that whatever was guaranteed, X amount of power, we are able to deliver. So that's another big driver. Then you have the whole railway. The Indian Railways has been putting a lot of money in. So we were the largest supplier of the copper cables for the railway electrification. Now that program is coming to an end, but a new program will start, which is to upgrade the electrical lines on routes where you'll have high-speed trains running. So like Vande Bharat, for example, it can run up to 160, I think up to 180 if I'm not mistaken. I don't remember the exact number. I think it's between 160 180 kilometers per hour. But today it's running at 100 or sub 100 because there's not enough power that is being delivered to the generating. Every bogie can generate actually. Generation is on the underbelly, and it can run on different formats. It's actually very uniquely designed. So it moves in multiples of 6. So you can have 12 bogie and 18 bogie, depending on how much you want to carry, how many passengers you want to carry on a trunk. But you've got a lot of cabling that's running through locomotives and coaches. You've got this whole defense program as part of this Atmanirbhar. Recently, you may have read that Mr. Modi's visit to France, more number of submarines and a higher indigenization program. Local manufacturing program has been signed up. So the submarines are, I think, the most cable intensive piece of defense equipment because of the number of gauges and instruments which are there. So very, very dense instrument cabling. We have that full range of instrument cables for all kinds of warships and underground search equipment and all that. So so that set of products is there. We also have wires which we've developed for the electric buses, and we have for electric cars and stuff, but the buses have become slightly more sophisticated because of the length of the wiring and the number of instruments and things that they have. So JBM, Electra, all these guys, we have the approvals in place. For JBM, we do the full harness and supply with the wiring.
So how many SKUs would we have on the wires?
It runs in thousands because the way we try to build this business is that the company's motto is tomorrow's solutions today. So we go to customers and find out what their pain points are, what the requirements are, and based on that, we've been going back and then developing those products. So, for example,
It's very customized.
You generally build a platform and then you customize that platform for a particular customer. So, for example, I'll tell you that one equipment that is being used extensively. India has one of the largest densities, meaning population of tunnel boring machines. There are tunnels coming up for railways, for the metros rather. There is a lot of tunneling happening in the mountain, which we don't see because Mr. Modi wants very quick access to the borders, and so the Himalayan mountains with a lot of tunneling going on, for example. So now the tunnel boring machine requires a very special lubricant. It's basically cutting through a monolithic rock. It also requires to be powered. So it has a very specialized cable which has to move. Just like a mining cable, it's attached to the end of an equipment that is moving. So we've developed a cable for that. The initial cables came in from Germany or China or Australia or wherever. Hereneck is a German company, TerraTech is an Australian company, Robbins is a US company. So these are all the companies whose tunnel boring machines are running. But it's a consumable. Now you keep on importing the cable. It's very expensive, the running cost goes up. And here the bidding is so, competitive. So we've developed the cable. Each one of them has slightly different fundamental construction is same, but each one has slightly different spec. Just to answer your question, that's how then you end up having major products and then sub products, as part of it. So we are not bothered by how many SKUs are there. We're just bothered by how many solutions we are providing to customers. And the whole equipment that we have, we've tried to make it as fungible as possible to be able to more flexibly manufacture product, because there's that's as far as this is concerned. As far as the your telecommunication is concerned, we have two basic products, as I mentioned. This is OPGW, and we have regular fiber optic cables. But the hybrid products are products where we have an advantage, because for example, you take a company like Sterlite or HFCL, they don't have a copper business.
Yes.
Whereas we have a significant copper business and capability of copper wire drawing, stranding, and all these defense, these oceanography products are actually a combination of power and fiber optic. The instructions and data is through the fiber optic line. The powering is done through copper of the equipment. One very interesting equipment for which we developed a system, and we are a main supplier to the Indian Navy, is they do mine sweeping. Just like you have mines which are put up, that blow up. If something touches them, there was a concern that some of our neighbors would have put mines around our offshore oil rigs. So if a fish comes in and touches the floor, you have an explosion that can take place. So there's a lot of mine sweeping that has been done, along certain strategic areas, etc. So all of these products are, and the reason why we've been pursuing
that Pulwama project, when they entered the Pakistani border, 60% of time was spent in just 1 kilometer for eliminating
mines.
Those mines which would have booby-trapped them.
Correct.
The rest of the thing took much faster.
So fundamentally, that has been the system. You have customer, they have a requirement, a problem to solve. If there is a cabling that can be used for a cabling solution that can be. That's why we changed the name of the division to Cable Solutions. Right. Because everybody needs to think of a solution. And I think that's what differentiates us from some of our very big competitors that are in the cable side. They have very large scale manufacturing like Polycab, KEI. They have been more focused on the power cable side and on the house wire, which is a branded product. So we also have now a range of that, which we are slowly growing. But our strength has been on the solution side. So that's just a basic overview. If you on the renewables, we move to the wind side. So there, our strength lies in the tower cable. When you look at the wind tower, there is a very specialized cable that carries the power from the blade, down. And that cable has a lot of torsion movement because every time that the windmill moves, the cable that's attached there goes through jerks and it also goes through movement.
What alloy is used in that cable?
There's a speciality of the alloy. There's a speciality is the insulation with. The insulation should not crack. When you keep moving it, and when you have the vibrations that run through it, the insulation can split.
Right. So does the size of wire decide the ability to transmit power, or how does it happen?
Absolutely, it does. But within that also, depending on the alloy that you have, the current carrying capacity can be taken into account. So just pure aluminum, you can't really go above 80, say 95 degrees is the max. You want to go to 150 degrees, 200 degrees, etc., then you have to use an alloy.
Right.
Otherwise, the metal can't handle the
So
higher
I'm
current.
trying to understand, where is the core differentiation for you? Is it in the conductor or the insulation? What is the
Both.
core differentiation?
So, if you want so many solutions in place, you need to control manufacturing of the core as well as the insulation. Because the moment you start going to these specialized polymer companies, they're not going to react as fast because the customer wants something different. So we have, if you go to if any of you go to the plant visit, which we'd be happy to organize, we have, for example, lab extruders in place, from these Braminder extruders or plastograph. So you can run, different polymers through that and they compute on these screens, all the different parameters for you. So that's how you can design your own insulation. So we have our own compounding capability and we have our own alloying. So the strength of alloying has basically come for the cable division from the conductor division. So our conductor division makes all the alloys and supplies it here.
Yes.
Which our competition who are good in alloying don't have a cable downstream business. And the big cable players don't have a good upstream rod and alloying capability. And that's how we've been able to basically for developing any business, you're looking for the white spaces that you can stand on, right? And the moats that you can create. So this has been one area where combination of things is where, we've tried to take advantage of. And as the application infrastructure and application requirements in India have grown, it's a progressive thing that happens with the sophistication. As your GDP grows, your requirements. You look at the automobiles on the road. You look at the buildings. All of those technologies have moved because now the customer has got more money. The customer is more discerning. So the specification changes. The higher you start moving your spec, the more the ability you have to differentiate your solution. So 10 years ago, that even though we had so many products, there's no market for it. The niche, sort of markets. And the one conscious decision that we took, and we are doing that even with this current 400 crore capex that we're putting in, is that we are building a high degree of fungibility in our capex. So you pay a penalty up front because, with flexibility comes cost. But by having that, it enables you to move your product portfolio becomes more flexible of what you want to concentrate on producing.
So this capex also the additional capacity that we're building.
So if you take it on a value basis, you get almost in the range of 8 to 10x of the investment. So about 450 crores of investment going in, which can get you about 4,000 to 5,000 crores of theoretical growth in finished product. Now, some of it is already underway and it's got installed. By next year, it will get all.
How much will add to your current volume, the current?
So if you want to support the cable business to grow at 20% a year for the next 5 years, this base is required. Like, so for example, what's included in that is buying a new 40-acre property, which can then start housing, all these increases. We've bought new property also along our conductor facilities, for increasing the rolling mills that are there. We put in infrastructure and got permission now. Just a trial run happened successfully. So that, keeping my fingers crossed. We have a molten metal arrangement that comes with Hindalco. We have a private road connecting Aditya Aluminum to our rod rolling facility. But Vedanta is about 30-40 minutes away. And there was a law in Odisha which, for whatever reason, that you can't bring in anything above a certain temperature on a road. Now, who set it up? What application it was for? Nobody knows. But finally, through getting the right things petitioned, etc., we were allowed to do trial runs, which happened just last week. So now that capacity, it makes more sense to expand the rod capacity over there. Because carbon footprinting is becoming very important, and today, I don't know to what extent you all see this ESG thing, but believe me that it's becoming a really important. When you're bidding on tenders today overseas, and it's only a matter of time before it happens here, you have to specify the carbon footprint of your products. So they're already into this scope 3. Scope 1, scope 2 is based on what your consumption is in the plant. The one is based on electricity, the other one is based on water. Scope 1 and scope 2. Scope 3 captures anything and everything that you are consuming. So it will include logistics, it will include the carbon footprint of your raw materials, all that. So today, for example, Indian aluminum is very efficient, but is very dirty because the amount of carbon that is being consumed to produce 1 ton by Hindalco or Nalco or Vedanta is very high compared to, say, what is being produced in Norway, which is all 100% hydroelectric and has a very, very low carbon footprint. So now we are specifying that. Think, you want to bid on this project, your carbon footprint can't exceed X. That has started. So you see our ESG reports, we have our 21 report, then the 22 is because it's, progressed substantially. Now in October, our 23 report will come out. A lot of work is going on in that area as well.
The existing conductor capacity was some 180,000 tons. So on that, how much would I think 2/3 of this cable should go to?
So actually when we conductor business has 180,000. The cable business, we don't even state what our conductor capability is because basically it needs to go inside the cable. So we have a fairly large conductor manufacturing business within the cable business also. So more than the conductor capacity only just increasing on the conductor side, the rod making capacity is being increased substantially because that's to support the growth of the conductor business as well as the cable business. And the cable business has also unique requirements. So for example, if you want to export any cables to the US market, it requires an 8,000 series alloy. And we believe that we make the best 8,000 series alloy in the country. So that's why, slowly we are getting feedback from a lot of our US clients that, they're happy with the consistency of the product which we're delivering. Most of our competitors are, they don't have the heritage of alloying. Not that they can't develop it, but we have a bit of a advantage because the conductor business has been alloying products for the last 20 plus years.
On the power and cable business, 2 questions. One is on the export side, what is the demand environment that you're seeing currently? 52% I believe on from exports. And in the past 3 quarters, the profitability has been slightly on the higher side as well, with about double-digit margin as compared to single digit. So help us understand both the aspects.
Okay, so in terms of the export side of the business, I believe that for us, it will be an integral part of our strategy, irrespective of whatever happens on the domestic side. Domestic demand is also growing, but the export demand will be there and will also continue to grow. Like, see, for example, we said renewable energy, one of the drivers, right? Now the US is adding 13 to 15 gigawatts. You talk to anybody, the utilities there, the EPC players, all their projections are showing that 13 to 15 gigawatts is going to go to 30 gigawatts a year addition. So along with that comes all of this stuff, right? You've got wind, solar, cable requirements, substation requirements, all that. So I think the demand is going to be, there for the next, at least a decade until all this is built out. Now there are some short-term headwinds, and I think we addressed it quite extensively in our earnings call also. That typically, during COVID, what was happening is that everybody wanted to buy through distributors who were stocking the product. So, because the supply chains were so broken, it had two aspects which were broken. One is the time that any manufacturer gave you. You placed an order on me, I can deliver it to you after 12 weeks. Right? So, you took that into account. And then you had the variability on delivering it from India to the US, or from China to the US, or from Colombia to the US, or Mexico to the US, or whatever. There are also containers problem, ship problem, all that stuff. So, when you add the two up, right, because finally you look at a fill rate. When the customer places the order, and am I able to deliver it or not? So if the variability is high, it means that it dictates a higher stock level to be held. Now when the reversal has happened, today you ask me how many weeks will you deliver, that 12 weeks has become 4 weeks. So 8 weeks is gone on that delivery cycle. Now on containers, I am getting container on demand. There are no 100, 200 ships which are sitting outside any US port. Ship is coming in and docking, like it was docking in 2019. There is no shortage of drivers, there is no shortage. The whole flow has gone back to what it was pre-COVID. So, there's a huge destocking taking place because of no need to hold that stock. Secondly, there's a massive penalty to holding the stock. The amount of rent you're paying and the interest cost today. Because it's gone up from sub 2% to now, some of these distributors are paying 7% in dollar terms for interest, or 6.5%, 7%. So this destocking is happening. That's one. Two, developers are also, see, the US, for example, is a market where 100% development is done by private players. It's not a government. There's no government utility. There are some subsidies to this infrastructure, this Inflation Reduction Act, which is coming in. So there are some form of subsidies and benefits which are coming in. But ultimately, there is a business house or a business that is deciding the pace of infrastructure, So supposing they want to add 200 megawatts, if they wanted to do all 4 projects at the same time, they feel like, hey, today the interest rates have peaked. It's going to take some, so it will probably taper over the next year to 2 years. So let's stagger the projects. Let's do 50 megawatt now, and then do 50 megawatt after 6 months, and then maybe we'll wait. The interest rates come down by 1-2%. It makes a meaningful difference in terms of the final ROI that they get on the project. So that's the second impact. So the time that it takes from going from 13 gigawatt, it may actually fall to 10 and then start rising, to go to 30. That's a second possibility. And the third thing is just the funding environment in which your debt service ratios and all this will change, right, with the interest rates having gone up. So our expectation is that, there is this one period where all this adjustment is happening. But because the US imports $19.5 billion of cables were declared that they imported in 2021. The total export from India is some 2,000 and odd crore rupees into that market. So this is a short-term problem, but we don't think that it will take us a few more months instead of going to distributors to go directly to EPC players and developers. So even if the market has temporarily shrunk for a few months, the addressable market for us is not changing so appreciably that we should be fine. We just have to work harder for a short term.
But how big is the threat of China just going aggressive into the market now? So would it be fair to say that at least over the past 1.5 years there was, while demand was strong, but there was favorable supply situation as well, where
it's
the competitive intensity was.
So there are certain markets where the Chinese products are not. You'll be surprised that in some projects in the US, they need a certification from or a communication from a senior officer of the company that there is no Chinese component used in the manufacture of the product. Even that has started coming. It's part of the RFQ requirements which are there. So there are certain places where the Chinese products are not a threat. The duties are high. But when you move to markets like in Europe, Latin America, in certain parts of Africa, it's a level playing field for India and China. There is no difference whatsoever. So there the Chinese have started getting significantly more aggressive. There is
across the portfolio, conductors, oils, and cables.
So you're seeing them more in terms of the cables are where the Chinese have been the most aggressive. Then to some extent on the conductors. On transformer oil, there is no impact of the Chinese at all because basically there's a monopoly producer that's PetroChina, that's state owned, and their whole focus is on supplying product into China.
Is there any way we can protect ourselves from this competition in the export market through differentiated products or through certifications or other sort of
Yeah, so
contracts?
we are doing that. The markets where we have been seeing a lot of traction is in markets like the United States and Australia, where there is a clear move of reducing Chinese intensity. So in the US, so there are big tariffs which are there. The tariffs for Chinese products are much higher than for Indian products. The Chinese are, they're trying to find ways around it, but the moment you try to find a way around it, there is a cost associated. So, for example, ZTT, which is a very large optical fiber and cable producer and conductor producer in China, they have ZTT India. So now ZTT India is trying to export, but their main manufacturing base is in China, right? The economies of scale and all that. But it's cheaper for them to do it from India because they're 35% duty, here 15% duty. So, but then we are more efficient than ZTT India by a mile. So,
and in terms of pricing, pre-COVID versus post, what is the difference that you're seeing between you and the Chinese?
So different between us and the Chinese places. So the Chinese are, in some cases, the Chinese market itself is in trouble. Some of them have been seriously aggressive in quoting on in certain territories. So in that sense, the competition has increased. But over a period of time, we are not really worried about that Chinese competition simply because the addressable market itself, just with renewable energy and all these things are so huge. There, the Chinese are really strong on the solar panel side, not necessarily on everything else that comes, the inverters, the panels, all that.
But is there
and we are seeing increased interest here. The kind of, so I'll give you an example. So we supplying to a particular utility, right? The utility works with certain EPC players, right? Who they're comfortable with. So some of the utilities who've used our products are pushing the EPC players saying you go and do a detailed inspection and because we would like you to see if you can increase intensity of purchases from XYZ. So we are seeing that interest is still continuing. That it's not that Indian suppliers they've tasted that Indian suppliers are very reliable in terms of quality, delivery. Language is a big benefit. Our ability to work through contracts with them. So I think there are all these sustainable advantages which are there. And the one thing that we've tried to do as Apar is that we've never looked at a short-term game. We've never been shy of making the investments and being patient in terms of those investments playing out. So in some cases you start small with some of these players, but if you're consistent over a period of time, then some of them are now looking at engaging with us at a much higher level than before. So I can't guarantee that, but the overtures are clearly in that direction. When they want teams of 8 and 10 people to come and spend time with your team here in India, that is a significant investment that a customer is making. So it should hopefully result in more sustainable business coming up subsequently. So after the monsoon, there are many people who want to make visits here, and they're no longer satisfied by doing a Zoom call or a Zoom inspection. Physically having.
But are you seeing pricing pressure as we speak now?
Yeah, there is definitely pricing pressure. I would say that there was a big premium, that was available during these difficult times because just like there was a flight to safety, as simple as that. You have a lot of uncertainties. You know, okay, here is one customer who's a supplier who's reliable. They tell us it's going to come in week so and so, or plus minus 1-2 weeks, में तो आ ही जाएगा, right? They will give us a priority, etc. So when that happens, you obviously tend to be there's no negotiation. You quote a price, the guys are ठीक है, supply करो. PO is coming to you in the next 5 minutes. Now today, when everything has gone back to normal, you know, that getting the better deal, negotiation, it's all back. But what is the fundamental strategy we followed? I don't think we're going to go too far away from it. We've taken standard products and focused on premium markets. And we've taken up premium products which are more solution oriented and focused on the domestic one.
So in terms of pricing, what will be the difference in exports and domestic?
We can get a higher margin typically from a good quality US customer or an Australian customer in spite of picking up all the logistics costs than supplying to somebody from Silvassa to a site in Gujarat or Rajasthan.
So what is
because it's just see so it depends on products, so I can't nail a number, but it could be in some cases several percent higher. Why? I'll tell you why. I mean, it's important to understand the reason why. So what happens in India is that we fundamentally follow a 2-bit system, and a lot of people who are in the asset aggregators today have had their heritage coming from government companies, because 10 years ago they were the only ones who actually bought these products, right? So the 2-bit process is what? Step 1, technical clearance. Step 2, commercial discussion. Whoever the cheapest after you clear the technical gets the order. Problem with that system is that the technical clearance requires you to clear a hurdle. So 40 on 100 becomes the same as 90 on 100. As long as you're 42, 45, 46, you've kind of cleared that hurdle, and then the next hurdle you got to cross is price. So you're technically approved and the cheapest. Right? Moment you go overseas, there is a different concept, which is the total cost of ownership. So the standard for the same product is much higher because they want. So you know the difference is an Indian supplier will come in and they'll say, okay, this is the conductor that you manufactured. You cut a lens from there. They'll test it, and if it's met all the requirements, the thing is approved. The US guy will also do that, but they will send a team in here, work on 3 shifts, and they will see the entire process of your manufacture. They will interview the operator, they will interview the lab technician, all that, you know. So it's that approval process is actually much more involved and detailed. So the number of people that they would send out an RFQ to is significantly lower than what a corresponding Adani or whoever would send it out over here. So the standard itself is much higher.
Total volume on the conductor side, what would be the breakup between?
It's about 50-50. Half of it is export, half of it is domestic.
Volume also and value also?
Yeah, almost. The range of products is different, but the values are about half and half, volume value. Yeah.
So in terms of business mix, over the next 2-3 years, as you see visibility today, what percentage of business will come from what part of the business?
So, you know, the way we look at it is we really want to see what gets us the highest net back. Netted for the risk that you take, you know. So metal risk, commercial risk, project risk, you know, there's a full internal system by which, risk assessment is done. So the thing can vary, but my sense is that the band will be only at like a 10% band. So right now at 50-50, you know, you may have domestic go to 60 and export go to 40, or domestic go to 60.
Not domestic exports, but from cables, conductors, and.
Oh, that way.
Cable growth rates are guided higher than conductor, and from where it is.
It's the cable business will grow. So when we acquired the cable business in 2008, it was a 100 crore business, right? It was like a BIFR acquisition. Last year we did 3,200. This year we are guiding for around 4,500, give or take. and then it'll continue to grow at, our target is to get it to grow at 20%, 20-25% a year for the next X number of years. And the reason is the addressable market, both domestic and export, is the largest in that. The conductor market is having a big growth relative to previous times because of the evacuation from all these new power sources that are happening. The oil side of the business is growing at that 5%. Lubricants, Klein has just published their India report. They're talking about a 3% growth in volume and a 5% growth in value.
So in next 2-3 years, will we be predominantly cables?
So cable will become the second largest business in the next, hopefully in FY25. And then I guess in another 4-5 years time it may reach the size of the conductor business also, which is about 7,000 crores last year. Because the addressable market itself is much larger. It's multiple times that of the. That was the whole logic with which we entered the business. It just took us some time because of the market environment. The vehicle that we bought was a bit broken, but it took a bit of fixing. But now once that it's reached a stage now, there's no looking back.
What is the hedging policy, or how is this done with the fact that you have 50% exports?
So
the currency is stable now.
It's currency.
Actually, the bigger problem is not currency. The currency is very easy to hedge.
You have
because,
a hedge against it.
yeah, so it's the currency is not an issue at all. The issue is really making sure that your metal is hedged.
Commodity.
And,
I meant the aggregate.
yeah, so the hedging of metal is something that we are quite we're very cognizant of, very careful of.
It's run on order to order basis.
Yeah.
Okay.
For
We
each
don't
order.
want to take any risk. With no person in this company is authorized, including myself or my brother Chaitanya, who runs the conductor business, to take any speculative risk on any metal.
For each order we take back to back 100%.
And every order that has a metal exposure of a certain size has to go through the risk committee. Like it goes through the risk review and the risk committee. And if we have to take on a risk which is there, we just won't take the order, no matter. Because it's finally a culture, right? You don't want to take a culture where you can take on risk on metal.
On the consumer cable side, we are the lead entrant there. So how do you see that opportunity for us, and what is our strategy to kind of penetrate that and
So we see a good opportunity there for 3 reasons. One is that A is complementary to the rest of the products. So it's completely mutually exclusive. We are growing this part of the business. It doesn't take away anything from the rest of the business. Number 2 is that it obviously offers better margins if you've got the right brand, and it offers better cash flow because you can do factoring, distributor financing, all that sort of stuff. And the third thing is that we believe that we have a really unique product. The reason why we never entered this market before is that we did not want to enter with a wire that just competed with Polycab or KEI or Phenolex. These are already very well established giant. They're giants in that particular space. And you go to any electrical contractor in Mumbai, and I wouldn't say any, but 70% of them will offer you a Polycab wire. It's got nothing to do with whether it's the best quality wire or whatever. It's just that it is the most popular wire, which has been around. They have very good distribution. They have a brand name, etc. So how do you fight that?
But is that the best wire or cable?
So, Bharat, that we don't think so, but finally beauty lies in the eyes of the beholder. So what we came up with, so rather than talk about competition, let's see what is the white space that we saw. So the white space that we saw was that there is possibility of bringing out a significantly superior technical product at a marginal increase in the cost. And that was for 2. So what we did is we took out this brand of Anushakti. We took out a brand called Anushakti. And Anu means atom, right? And Shakti is power, right? So the whole range of our wires is based on Shakti. Anyway, women power is taking over the whole, the whole country and the world in that sense. And So the differentiators in this is it can carry 50% more power for the same thickness of the wire, for the same gauge of wire. Secondly, it is a melt resistant wire. Why does a short circuit take place? The insulation melts away, two naked wires touch each other, there's sparking and a fire. This is a melt resistant wire. It uses the same fundamental technology as is used for wiring a submarine or a locomotive. It uses the same electron beam, it uses the same type of insulating material, and we're able to deliver it at a marginal increase in the cost because we do everything in-house. So anyone, if you, and the way we've been selling this product is through demonstration. So if anybody, if, you have an electrician, you have an end owner, if you see the demo, there is a 99% chance that you go for an Anushakti wire. Because you can take any two wires on the equipment and you just crank up the current. So it's a parallel circuit, right? So what is going into A is going into B. You're 100% sure, right? So this wire will actually overheat and start smoking and the insulation will fall off. Whereas an Anushakti wire, even if it starts smoking, which happens significantly later, the insulation still sticks on the wire. It doesn't come off. That's why it's melt resistant. So once we got that differentiator, then first we wanted to try it out. So we tried out two markets, Gujarat and Kerala. Gujarat is a total mixed market. It has residential, it has commercial, it has industrial. Kerala is largely a residential driven market. So when in both the markets we found that there was a good acceptance, then we started investing in that. So last year year before we did 100 crores, last year we did 175. This year we should be at 300 and target is to do 350 plus. So it's a business that we see growing, and once you have a flagship product, then all the other things that go through the channel also can be sold. Today we are in Maharashtra, Gujarat, Kerala. We've just started the 4 other southern states, Telangana, Andhra, Tamil Nadu, Karnataka. On the east we've started Bihar, West Bengal and Northeast. And in the north, we have a presence in Uttar Pradesh, Haryana, and NCR. The next target is to then start Rajasthan.
What would be the margin difference, B2B versus B2C?
So, the B2B depends on the nature of the product. You get into the regular power cables and stuff, then you've got relatively low margin, it's very competitive. The moment you start getting into all these specialized products for submarines, this, that, all that, the margin profile is a vastly different profile. So, elastomeric cables generally run at about 10% on an average higher margin than a typical power cable.
And that side, what kind of growth we are aiming to get?
So last year, Bharat bhai, Ramesh would be better.
We had about 10% volume growth in the conductor division. Last year we grew by about 50%. Now we're growing about 10%.
From 145, 150, about last year it was 160. So this year we'll do about 180,000 tons. But our copper, some of our copper products are growing, OPGW is growing, So value wise, you will see maybe, I think,
15%.
More than a 10% growth, like to like on commodity products.
And oils also will be.
Yeah, so the oil business is increasingly becoming a cash generating business. So our strategy is, very often people ask me why you're not splitting the company. But it's like, if the cash generated from here can be used to drive that cable business, when we see a lot of opportunity where investment can be done and growth can be obtained.
It's a cash cow.
Yeah, we don't need that much investment anymore. We've already invested a lot of money. You may invest 10, 15 crores, 20 crores out of, in the same period, the other businesses are in hundreds.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Started? Okay. So, good afternoon, everyone. I'll give a brief background about Apar Industries, about the divisions and also the products and all what we see as the market landscape also currently. And then we can open up for.
Do you have an edge in what you do?
Yeah, we
How
will.
do you think of the future?
So basically, we manufacture products that are building blocks for the electricity infrastructure. We basically has three divisions. We have conductor division, cable division, and oil division. Very briefly, conductors are the overhead used in the overhead transmission lines. These are pure aluminum and copper. They don't have an insulation. And cable.
Only aluminum or aluminum and copper?
Aluminum and copper, both will be. And
Copper is all imported.
yeah, imported and local. In the cable business, cable is your aluminum plus aluminum or copper plus an insulation. So that's for the difference broadly between conductor and cable. It is used for various applications, specialized cables, and there are power cables and cables used for different purposes. Even conductors, we have a range of conductors that are used for different purposes. There are the conventional conductors which can carry current at a particular voltage level, and then there are high efficiency conductors that can carry conductor as much higher than the conventional conductors.
In cables, we are also doing ESP.
Sorry? No, we don't have.
You don't have.
We don't have. Yes. In the conductors, we have a much higher
Conductors will be used for transmission.
Transmission up to 765, 800 kV we have.
kV.
The cable is up to 66 kV. 66. So in the conductor division, as I was saying, that in terms of the products, we have one which are used for your conventional conductors, and we also have your high efficiency conductor that is able to carry a current which is much higher than the conventional conductors. And that's where the differentiation is about in terms of our high efficiency conductors, because these are the premium conductors. Which does not need an extra infrastructure to be placed. So if places like Mumbai where there is a lot of concentration of electricity needed when the demand is more and the supply is constrained because of the transmission structure of the particular right of way, the conventional conductor which have been laid earlier can't carry current beyond a particular voltage level. And that's where these premium conductors, which have been developed in the last over the last 15 years, the work has been doing, and we have been supplying this since 2014. This has increased in terms of its utilization levels now. We see more electrification requirements. These are able to carry current at a much higher frequency level, so you don't disturb your current infrastructure right of way. The existing tower infrastructure, everything is as it is. You need to just reconductor the old lines with the new lines. Of course, the new line, the HTLS line, should be capable of the design and the technical know-how is there. It's just not only putting the product there, but it also talks about your design and the know-how and the skills that are needed to string the conductors on top of towers, so that even with such a high frequency of power, the tower should not come down, or the conductor should not sag down. So these are the conductors that are able to transmit power at a much high frequency level, but still it will be overhead. It won't kind of sag over there. So that's the.
You are the only guys who do this in India.
We are largely the guy plus Sterlite Power. So there aren't too many other players, unlike the other conventional conductors which are flooded with a lot of unorganized.
So here, do you have an edge over others?
Yeah, the entire product design, technical know-how, manufacturing expertise, it's a design, and it's a very different ball game as compared to the normal conventional product that, because here what happens is it's not only supply of the product, it's also the designing of the product comes there, because you need to see that these conductors are able to withstand the towers are able to withstand the conductors which are there. You don't want a conductor there and your power getting transmitted and the tower actually collapses there.
So in the conductor manufacturing process, margins are low, raw material cost is the major cost. Any advantage you have there?
So that's where these premium products are there, which which are a different pricing and margin profile than the conventional conductor.
And somebody was telling me your Renuport facility is like next to the plant, so you
we have that molten metal coming directly from the plant, so we get some cost advantage there. But a large part of this premiumization comes from this product itself, which is different than the conventional.
So premium products would be all copper products.
Even aluminum products.
Even aluminum products. Sure.
So speaking about conductor, can you mention a few applications of the conductors apart from the overhead railway lines that we see as conductor? So can you?
So one is the overhead lines, that you see in the cities. Even if you see, the conductors that connect the two towers, these are actually overhead conductors.
So they are absolutely non-insulated.
They are not insulated. Then you also see conductors application in railways. For railways electrification, that is there. So largely for over transmission lines, over railways, and we are also getting into bus bars, copper conductors.
And how critical is this conductor manufacturing process? Because I believe that you basically require a copper metal or an aluminum metal, and then basis the ductility of the metallic property of ductility, you convert them into rods.
Yeah.
So how critical is this process of manufacturing, and why not do you face any competition from other places?
So there is competition when it comes to the conventional conductors. There's a lot of competition when it comes to conventional conductors.
But you said that apart from the only steroid
No,
problem,
that's only on the premium conductor. So that's why if you see, this particular slide that we already put in the investor deck, it talks about the transformation journey of the conductor division in the last 1 decade. Earlier, before 2014, we are largely into the conventional conductor space. That's where maximum competition are there. It's a product business there. But this transformation that happened after 2014 talks about premiumization that we did in this particular division. So it's not only the product, but it's also the design, the know-how, and the expertise. And to some extent, we are also doing the mini EPC. So it's not the product supply. We are also doing EPC in terms of laying the reconducting part. So we remove the existing conductor and we put the new conductor. So if you look at places like over the railway stations, or the mountainous terrain and difficult places where your lines actually go, that's also we do that. That's the reason how this product is so premium and different than what the conventional conductor, which is just supply of the product.
Sorry, what's the technical specification that lets you call it premium?
So this has its own alloy. So it's the aluminium plus alloy.
Okay.
That gets into that, and we do our own alloy manufacturing.
Okay, so it's a proprietary alloy.
Yes.
Okay. And what improvement in performance? Like how do you
The
measure?
improvement in the performance is that it's able to carry that high, frequency of power between two towers. The other option that that is there is that you actually put an alternate infrastructure, right? Complete new infrastructure, new towers, which is very difficult in let's say places like cities where already your right of way is limited. So either you do that, or you are able to utilize existing tower infrastructure and do a much higher transmission. So that's where.
Sorry for the.
Please.
Sorry for the technical ignorance. I just wanted to understand, it will not matter whether it's AC or DC, right? The source of the power, because if we are looking at renewables incrementally, most of it is getting into DC. So for us, it will not matter.
It won't matter.
And then, how much of your conductor revenue mix is the premium?
So if you look at conductors as compared to Apar is about 50%, and within the conductors about 40-45% is the premium conductor.
what will your market share in these premium products?
Premium products, you would be the high, about 75-30% would be our market.
And how much of it is imported in India? Like you would be probably number one, right?
Aluminium and copper is the raw material that either.
No, I think conductors, you'll be number one, right?
Yeah.
With 30% of the market share. Sterlite would be probably somewhere between number 2 and number 3 because they do a lot of their own. So we don't get a sense of how much is but I'm just assuming that they will be number 2, but they are not more than 20%. So who's the remaining?
So there are different, areas of this conductor, like this HTLS that we're talking, our share would be much higher than that. It could be 50% more than that also. Because the premium range are actually scattered in multiple products. HTLS and this OPGW, then there's a copper conductor over there. But this transmission that we talked about, our share could be even more than 50%.
Okay, specific to transmission, it can be more than 50%. Outside transmission, like you're saying for the broad base,
would be there.
Okay. And what's the rough market size today?
So, market size in terms of conductors, if you look at the domestic, we would be anywhere between 50-60% market share.
What will the total market?
Global would be, there's no
3,000 crore rupees, 4,000 crore rupees.
Yeah, in terms of tons we calculate, the global market share could be about 1 to 1.5 million tons.
So what keeps you from growing and filling up the gap? There is still, this is an imported product?
No, it's a local.
No, so India imports nothing.
The aluminium or copper.
The raw material.
Aluminium and copper, aluminum ingots.
You import, but India, for the conductors, everything is manufactured in-house, domestically. And how much extra margin you get in premium product?
That, it depends on the product specification. We don't have, because there are some 500 to 1,000 different products catering to various.
The margin profile has gone up substantially. Some bit of it could be commodity price playing.
No, so the margins has not gone up because of the commodity price, because we do a back-to-back hedging. The moment we get an order, we take a hedge position and that is passed on. So whether increase or decrease in the commodity price is in the
How does that variation happen from 50,000
which is what, so the reason why this margin has gone up is because of premiumization. The two things that has happened. One is the premium portfolio has gone up. And our premium portfolio is about 40-45% of the total conductor portfolio. The second thing that has also happened last year especially is that the non-premium products, which are largely we are selling in the Indian market, very competitive, very less small margins, that we started exporting. That on an export is giving us a much higher margin than what we used to get in the Indian market. So that's the other thing that has happened last year. So what happened in last year, FY23, premium products anyway had a high margin. And the non-premium product also had a high margin because of it. So and suddenly, had the entire portfolio much high profitable. Now in terms of going...
Why export profitability is higher in a commodity products and in...
So because the export, in the case of export market, they not only look at the price thing. Because it's a lot more about quality, reliability, reputation, various things. Because what happens is aluminium and copper conductors is that relying on many unorganized suppliers, they don't do a hedging properly. They also do sort of speculation. So overseas customers, they want a reliable party who will deliver their product in time, because all these products are used for some other purposes during the entire EPC thing. If there is a delay on their aluminium conductors, they will delay their entire EPC thing. So they don't, unlike in India, where Indian market where there is this lot of price game. In the overseas thing, they'll also look at whether companies have a proper risk management appetite or not. So that's where
going forward.
So what has happened in last year also, apart from these things, there also has been I would say one-off kind of gains, because in markets like US, people were wanting to fill up their warehouses because there were a lot of pent-up COVID demand happened, a lot of supply chain disruptions were there due to which the freight cost was much higher. And customers just wanted to fill up their warehouses. Some of those things may not continue now, because those situations have not eased out. The freight rates has come down.
These are the things that it should be easy for you to put a number that it should not from a 50,000 fall below.
That's what we are indicating. Our margins to be 25,000 plus the tailwinds. There could be still some tailwinds coming because companies may still be wanting to order from India and not from there's also China plus one happening. And also the other thing happening is there's a lot of infrastructure boom in the US. So depending on the criticality of the project, depending on the urgency they want to complete their project, the orders could be coming. So we don't have an exact number where it could end, but what we are saying is that we may not get as high as, let's say, 50,000 margin or something that even in some quarters we saw. The base level would be about 25,000 per metric ton. Plus, there could be tailwinds coming up because of various other reasons attributable to
this margin position slightly differently. On a per ton basis, we have gone from 22,000 per million ton to 38 point something, right? Yeah, 39,000 almost right? So for conductors, how much of this is commodity price for us, which we are retaining? How much of this?
None. There is absolutely none.
We have not retained any commodity price. It's absolutely a mix.
Yeah, because the commodity price is actually passed through. That's what I was saying.
Yeah, exactly. So there would be some inventory benefit which we have.
There isn't anything because we don't. We run complete hedge with. Okay. So whether it's an increase or decrease, it gets passed on to.
So this, if the current cycle continues, this is sustainable.
Yeah,
If
so-
the
25 plus is sustainable.
Yeah, 25 plus is what.
No, 38 is what you reported this quarter.
Yeah.
I mean, in Q1. So you are saying of that.
So no, typically for our business, no, we don't look at such a quarter thing because no, these are
Yeah,
projects.
yeah,
We,
yeah.
you know, you need the execution is there. No, some of the product manufacturing time,
Yeah.
because there's all these audits.
Absolutely fair.
So those things. So we don't look at quarter on quarter, but it's more direction, and at the same time, we are not expecting a steep reduction. You know, to whatever 25,000 number, right?
Then why put a 25,000 number?
The reason why we have put 25,000 number is that, you know, because if you look at 3 years before, what used to be the
10 to
standard?
14,000, yeah.
10,000, 12,000, it used to be
You are
there.
saying it is
And
next
that's where, to answer your question, the product mix has changed. You know, it used to be just 8 to 10,000. And because of various changes in the product mix, that we see, you know, even if we don't get all this, you know, cold, pent up and US, those things, because the sheer reason that we have changed the product mix, it can stand up to 25,000 is the number that we had. And that, if you see some of the old earning call, we have not just jacked up from 10 to 25,000. It was 10,000, then I guess it went to 12,500, 15,000, 17,000, 21 and 25. And we were actually getting that comfort level, no? As we are not, you know, seeing that what could be the reasonable number, at least it was settled. That where, no, we felt that, no, gradually it may settle to this 25,000 and therefore plus the tailwinds. Now, what could be the quantum of tailwinds and all is something will, you know, depend on all
over
that.
time. So for the US, you are the natural supplier, or there are other countries who are also competing? Turkey manufactures something?
Could be there.
Turkey.
But Turkey is facing challenges right now. So I think one of the reasons for our export pickup is also Turkey is kind of.
How would we at the utilization level, or does that matter in this? Because
So
customer gets
about, you know, 85% should be our capacity utilization level. But you know, that doesn't matter so much because we keep on investing. We again we have some plans to invest further now.
What will be our current capacity and how much you are expanding?
85 to 90% utilization.
Okay.
So how can be the growth here in this conductor space?
Sorry?
Conductor, what kind of a growth you want to do?
Growth we expect could be about 10% volume growth. Volume growing.
If that is also, should we move to oil, which is the smaller part, and then move to cables?
What is driving this 10% growth? Because power in India is not growing.
So that's what I was about to, you know, mention before this question. The things that is, you know, driving growth, and you know, to some extent it's common to conductor, cable and also some part of oil, is, you know, a combination of various things. Like, you know, the first thing is renewables. The world is actually moving to renewables, you know, solar and wind, and in some cases nuclear also, and which was something not there if we say, you know, about 6-7 years ago. Is something that has been happening very recently. And for all these renewable forms of energy, the quantum, the intensity of electrification is very different. So for instance, in case of wind, the place of generation will happen where, you know, you get a lot of wind. Similarly, solar where the sun is strong. But the consumption need not be necessarily in that area. It could be completely in different city, state, country, wherever it is. So you need to transmit power from where it generates to the place where it is used. And therefore, these products are used. So in the solar, you have very different types of, you know, string cables. It's there on top of the solar panels, which first need to, you know, get that electricity, and then it comes from the solar panels to the ground. And similarly, wind will be there from the wind turbines, from the windmills, you know, the nacelle wiring and the tower cables. It will take the electricity down, and from there it has to go to your inverters, junction boxes and substations. Then it will go from substations to your, you know, final place of distribution. So here you have different types, quantum, intensity of cables first to get the power from all the renewable sources, and from there to transmit to place X to place Y, you need also overhead conductors, sometimes underground cables, and then you also need transformer for.
But all of this is to even coal manufacturing, coal thermal production happens in, let's say, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, and consumption is happening elsewhere. So Sorry, I'm not able to
Yeah,
fully
so the
understand
difference
why
between this
the-
thermal and solar is that solar is much more distributed. Like thermal is all concentrated at one place, but
Right.
solar you can there'll be much distributed kind of power. So you need a separate infrastructure to bring the power
To
from
one
solar. Like the intensity of conductors and cables during thermal is very different than what is there in.
So if you have a 100 megawatt coal power plant, or you have a 100 megawatt effective, I mean, I guess it's 500 megawatt solar power plant, is the
Patalago,
Ah.
thermal one location.
Ah.
This one 50 location.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. It's very much distributed.
जैसे गुजरात में वो पार्क है तो वहाँ पे
एक जगह अगर 50-50 करोगे तो
सेम है. Okay.
Even उसमें भी the intensity is always different because of the thermal.
50 है लेकिन 250.
Yeah, the thermal power के लिए you don't need the kind of string cables and nacelle wiring and those things that are used in renewables. It's a very different kind of special application.
May I ask roughly how much a conductor goes into a 100 megawatt project? Roughly.
So it more of in terms of the project comes from the cables part of. That cable is where your solar project and wind project is there. And then conductors are needed to transmit from one place to another place. So very roughly, I think in one of the windmills, it for a windmill it was about 1 kilometer of wiring inside the wind where the fans rotate. There itself is about 1 kilometer, and then from there to the ground it takes about maybe 200 meters or something cabling. So and then you need from there to.
So a solar 100 megawatt rough assumption is it needs for a solar roughly 200 kilometer of cable is needed for a solar 100 megawatt project. So for a 200 kilometer cable for a solar, roughly how much conductor will be needed? I'm combining AC/DC.
No, so conductor doesn't go with that particular. The conductor depends on from the distance between two places.
Okay.
Because it's not conductor will not be there in your windmills and your solar panel. Because conductor is more distance from where X to X, Y.
Connecting to the grid. So with now power grid looking at roughly, okay, with India's just from an India market point of view, if power grid is spending 1.7 to 1.8 trillion rupees over the next 10 years in transmission projects, so I am assuming 50% of that would be equipment because there will be transformers and everything, and 50% would be tower, cable, and everything else. So how much of what should be our
share?
TAM, total addressable market.
Broad number, and we can't get how much would be the conductors requirement within the overall budget that power grid has.
No, I'm just trying to say whether 2% of this TAM, what will be a TAM, total addressable market?
I won't be able to offhand give you a particular number how much would be out of, let's say, power grid expansion.
No,
it depends on the kind of requirements of that particular project. We need to get nitty-gritties into what exactly is that. Overall thumb rule will not apply there.
Okay.
Again, within that conductor, it depends whether it's going to be premium conductors, it's going to be conventional conductor, and then there are so many types of conductors. In case of some conductors, your metric ton to kilometer ratios are different. In some conductors, metric ton to kilometer. So thumb rule may not be able to put over there.
Actually, 10% seems low to me in the context of electrification. When we look at Europe and the US in terms of the growth in electrical capital goods sector.
So as of now, we are.
Is that a conservative number or?
No, so as of now, that's what the opportunity we see. And if you see 10% growth is on a number which is about 50% growth in FY23.
Fair enough.
See, 110,000 was there and going to 160. As of now, we see that. But we are not restricted to 1 year here. As I was talking about this renewable thing. The other thing which I wanted to talk about is on the public transportation and the mobility. So these are the things that we are not going to see for a year or two. It's going to be more of a decade-long thing. So as we see volumes growing up, you will see this opportunity also increasing. So in terms of public transportation mobility, that plays also in a lot of intensity of cables and conductors there. You see metros coming up, the bullet trains.
So slightly looking at what we are at after through 15 minutes left, we move to oil and cables.
Yeah, so I think cables and conductors is a very common thing which I am saying that renewable source of energy and your public transportation including mobility new transmission systems would be there. This would be common to my cable and the conductor.
Cables, how did you choose the space that you chose? It's slightly
The
differentiated.
biggest delta was outside conductor, which is also a cycle, has been cables for us in the last few years. So what shifted? What changed?
So the competitive advantage that we have in cable is that the range of cable that we have is the widest range. So we supply not only to the power cables, we also supply for solar, we supply to wind, we supply to shipping industry, we supply to mining industry. There is a defense cable. There is this.
Not the largest here.
Well, let me just complete before you interrupt every time. Then we also supply to the railway industry there. And what we do here is that we actually go and find this requirements of the customer. So that's what differentiate us from the pure power cable manufacturing. Because each of these specialized application cable will need a requirement of the customer, which is different than will be unique there. So, like for instance, in case of mining business, the kind of cabling needed and the kind of solution needed is very different from shipping. So we work with the customers at mining industry, shipping, defense, and develop these cables for their specific requirement. And that's where the number of SKUs keeps on growing, number of application keeps on growing, and that's also what makes us innovative, because we are not kind of making a product and then finding a customer. It's more checking what the customer is a requirement and then kind of solutioning that thing. So the path that we went through on our elastomeric cable, which is a special application cable, has actually paid us rich dividends, because it also solar and wind also happen to be the fastest growing segment across the globe here. The other thing that happened in the cable division is during COVID time, we went ahead and took a lot of UL approvals. Now, the UL is an approval for sale of any cables in the United States. And it takes about 1 year, 1.5 years to get the approvals. And we have the largest number of certificate of compliances for sale of this approval in US. What that has helped is that last year, our exports to US even before the first half of FY23 was almost virtually nil. And because of this US approval, UL approval that we had, we are able to ship to the US customer. And that has actually helped us a lot in the last 1 year.
So roughly what would be the sales from US right now?
About 1,000 crores we did in the last financial year.
And this was 0 2 years back, 3 years back.
Yeah, it was close to 0 in the cable segment 2 years back. So that is what actually helped us to grow volume. And as we see now, US is a very big opportunity for cables, both from renewables, solar.
266
Yeah.
Sorry, we are doing roughly 4,000 crore rupees of revenue from cables.
3,200.
Yeah, 3,200. I'm just annualizing the current quarter. 967 into 4. Okay, 3,500 crore rupees we are doing. Of that, 1,000 odd is US, 30% odd is US.
Yeah. Wow. So about out of my exports, 65 to 70% is US.
Is there any tax or duty advantage that has changed in the last 1-2 years that somebody else was supplying?
There were actually multiple things. So one is that there are actually 2-3 things that is actually helping us. One is the spending on the renewable forms of energy. That per se is contributing to the increase. The second is that the transmission lines in the US were all very old. At some point in time they also need to relay, and a lot of infrastructure push is happening in the US there. The third thing is this China Plus One, clearly also helping. So the duty structure from India to the US and China to the US, India is much more advantageous than in China. The combination of these things.
What's the difference in duty between Indian and
About 15% for some of the products. 10 to 15%.
And for a cable, that's huge, right?
Yeah, it's huge. So this was and then also some of the other reasons that happened last year. I was saying the pent up demand for COVID, the reason for the requirement for them to stack up, fill up all the warehouse. So all this has actually have been happening over the last 1 year in conductors and cable. Some of it will even continue in the future, like your renewables demand, thing will even continue in the future. Some of it, like the transmission systems that US is going to do, Inflation Reduction Act, they're going to continue. What may not continue is things like COVID pent-up demand and how they want to stack up the
Steady state, what should we expect in cable?
Cable. We are looking at about 25% value growth on quite over a long period of time. There could be 1 or 2 quarters that we already sounded off in the recent earnings call because of de-inventorization. Could be impact in US, but if we look at a long term, we are looking at about 25%.
What is the share of China in US imports?
I don't have the exact numbers.
And we have the capacity here?
We have capacity. We are also building up capacity. So we are also planning to spend about 400 crores in capex over the next 12 to 18 months. About 2/3 of that will go to the cable division.
And how much capacity does that increase?
About 1 to 8 times.
What's the source of technology advantage here?
So the solar and wind itself, the manufacturing is very different and complicated, especially the wind kind of cable, because the wind cable has to go inside the windmill where it has to run all this thing. So many number of cycles it has to do that thing. That manufacturing expertise in India, I don't think there are too many players also. There is one more company apart from there, and we have about more than 70% market share in the wind market in India. So it's a manufacturing itself is very difficult. And
but the technology is with us. It's not as if we got license or something.
Yeah, it's our own.
So continue to do this only, or there are new things that you are planning in cable? Maybe wires to home.
Wires we are doing. That's a space we are very less as of now. About just 175 crore last year. That also we plan to expand it, but it's going to be very different. So it's not going to. Both are going to be mutually exclusive. There's a very separate team, separate focus that's happening here. And the good part is that we have a very differentiated product here. We have this E-beam wires, which no other player in the Indian market have that thing. The advantage of that is that you can carry actually 50% more current than the best wire which is there in the market. And it is melt resistant. It means that it is much more short circuit resistant than some of the other wires. So that's the USP we are promoting on this Anushakti house wires in India. And we are explaining that to all these influencers, to the electricians, to whatever customers.
It's a different market, right? So first question that this is.
It's a different, and therefore it's going to be mutually exclusive. So it's not going to this separate team, a separate kind of investment mindset into B2C than what goes to B2B. So it's not going to it's not going to take into any other share of that thing. It's going to be a separate thing. But that what we felt is that we can also be present in that, especially with the unique USP that we have, and we can build the channels over there. And then once the channel is there, we can also promote a lot of other solar products at some point of time to the channel.
So the risk is that historically conductor and cable and to something the lubricant market tends to be largely cyclical. In an upcycle, what we saw last year, right, 60, 70, 80%, right? B2C tends to be likely more base, right? So when we look at our revenue profile, how much of that would be, let's say, steady state revenue, because there will be some, like, cable will not go to zero after a cycle, right? So
as of now, our B2C is very less. If you see cable B2C is just about 175 crore, which is hardly anything. We're largely B2B. But this kind of B2B, given the external environment that you're seeing on renewables, on public transportation, mobility, is something that we expect that it's not going to be a year or two. It's clearly going to be a decade-long game which will be there. Again, what we also see is it's not going to be a country-specific or a region-specific phenomenon. It would be at a pan-global level. You look at countries across US, this is happening. Europe will see this happening once they want alternative forms of natural gas over there. Countries like Australia are wanting to develop metro. There's a lot of metro focus happening in Latin America. If you look at it, it's a more of a pan-global phenomenon. Some would be at different points of time it could be high or low, but over a decade long we really see that opportunity. So it's a very different cyclical thing this time that we are seeing than your routine. And on top of it, India, if you see, a lot of things are happening in India itself. Look at schemes like RDSS coming here to improve the distribution infrastructure. Then metros and railways are happening. Electric vehicles are happening
So
here.
HVDC lines you will have a play?
In conductors, yes.
Yeah.
So this phenomenon of the cyclicality that you talked about is very different. It's more looked about a sustained kind of a growth over a long period of time at a pan global level.
So roughly, like, if India, let's not, so globe will be like US also has energy transition targets, and India in itself can be a large market. Do you think these two markets are good enough for us, and we are going to be?
No, we are going to look at the world as a whole. We are not going to be restricted to any particular geography. Even today, we supply to more than 140 countries. Our products are there across oil, conductors, and cables. And we also don't have a specific number in mind in terms of export. What we look at, what's going to give us a maximum profitability.
Just to invert this question, I thought it was a very good question, that historically your profitability has been cyclical. Historically, it's been low profitability, growth has been...
I'll tell you the reason why historically it has been low is basically two things. One is that on the conductor front, largely it has been focusing on the conventional conductor space. This high premium was not there. The second thing is that the export proportion was much less. So, these two things is what has changed in the last 1.5 to 2 years. If you look at cable business, even 2 years before, the export ratio was just about 25%. Conductors were largely the conventional. Look at conductors EBITDA per metric ton maybe 3 years before. It would be in the range of 8 to 10,000 per metric ton. So the ball game that has changed is the premiumization of the portfolio that we have been doing, and for which the work has been happening over the last 1 decade. But the market has opened up now with a lot of electrification coming up and requirements for electricity being more. So we already had the product. The market has now come up. The premiumization has come up. Innovation has been there. We are just getting into so many application-oriented products in the cable business. Globalization has been happening. We are spreading our wings to places where requirement is there. China Plus One also has helped us. These are the things that has actually changed.
So cables, your 25% target is conservative, or it should be better?
So we are looking. So we don't have conservative, aggressive targets. We just have one guidance number, and as of now we are looking at a 25% growth number.
So coming down to the last piece, your oil business, you see that as a steady cash cow, or is it?
So oil business also, if you split it, in terms of the splitting, I mean the product categories, about 1/3 goes to transformer oil, and transformer oil also is used in all this transmission network there. So wherever you need to step up or step down, that's where you're using. So if you look at take an example of the renewable energy that I talked about, at some point of time you will have to, from the place it is generated to the place it is distributed, at different times you have to step up and step down. That's where the transformer is used. And if you use transformer, you need the transformer oil also. So the requirement of transformer oil will go linear, like how your conductors and cabling and the reasons of these renewables, the infrastructure spend, the public transportation mobility space, which needs so much of electrification. The transformer oil will also grow up in that particular proportion.
Traditionally, the raw material for these were extremely Russia dependent. Right?
Yeah.
Where the current geopolitical environment is, and do you see the risk of, like, again, I know nothing happened in the last 2 years, but we are also exporting to US. We have seen that sometimes they have come down. How are you trying to just deal with this in terms of how are we seeing it geopolitically?
Which one?
The transformer oil. Because raw material we have to buy from Russia, right?
No, not Russia. It doesn't come from Russia. It comes from the US. We take from South Korea.
Okay.
So there are different sources.
And with Russia getting impacted, are we seeing?
We are not seeing any impact of that. Because in fact, because of Russia, I think you will actually see demand will go up, because people will need to invest behind all this renewable source of energy. So we'll actually see that. So what we have been seeing, China Plus One, we'll actually start seeing Europe also getting into more renewables. So the overall volume we are going to see is going to increase only because of that.
The margin profile not changing significantly, especially on conductor and even cables I saw. Is your incremental payback period now quite low?
It will be, because it also depends on the product that we make.
No, but we will be in a way kind of setting up larger premium capacity.
Yeah, so so what we do is that premium products we sell in the Indian market. And the non-premium product we sell for export.
And that export is getting
much,
higher realization.
also getting a higher realization. So that's what I'm saying, that where we are not going to, we look at where it's going to be the maximum profitability, and that would be the.
So how is your, let's say, per ton capex typically in conductor or cables?
Per ton, we don't calculate, but we look at asset turns more. So about 7-8 times asset turns.
7-8 times your asset
Yeah,
turn.
on an average, and some product could be 1:6, some product could be 1:10.
Okay.
But on an average, could be 7 to 8 times.
Even in oil, the margins increase. So what would be the sustainable number?
So oil actually, again, as you need to look at a 12-month number. Because if you look at quarterly number, it changes. Because oil we can't hedge. So there could be some inventory gains in the oil business. They're looking about 5,000 to 6,000 per K in the oil division. EBITDA.
How much was it last year?
The last year was also about 4,500 on a 12-month basis.
Higher.
Yeah. But if you look at a quarterly number, it went from 9,700 to 4,500, 1,600, 3,500. So we need to look at a 12-month number.
So roughly 35,000 crore rupees of revenue for the next 3 years. I'm not holding you to that number, I'm just rounding up the number.
So it take oil about 5% growth in volume we are talking. Conductors about 10% growth. Cable about 25% value.
Yeah, so roughly between 30 and 35 is the range for total revenue, right? See,
35,000 what?
Top line, yeah.
No, we are about 14,000. 14,000 annually now. I don't know how did you get 35,000.
Okay, yeah. So roughly 17 to 18 this year, and then between 20 and 22 next year at a similar kind of a growth trajectory, right? How much operating leverage is left in the business?
Sorry?
Operating leverage, which is incremental operating leverage we can get in the business.
Didn't get margin. Margins you have indicated. It's about 10 to 12% in the cable division. Would be about 5,000 to 6,000 per K in the oil division. Conductors, as I mentioned, 25,000 plus tailwinds is what we look. And this is something we look at over a medium term thing. There could be few quarters here and there. But,
trying to understand your growth and margin trajectory.
Correct. As of now, that's the visibility that we have.
And no debt, no nothing, right, in the business.
Now we have what you say in the balance sheet.
So, last line.
So you see yourself blended business growing faster than other cable companies?
I don't know what other cable companies thought their aspirations are there, but no, what is happening is that the market is going to be huge. So it's going to be very huge because of all these developments on the external thing, export incentives, China plus one, renewables energy. So you're going to have the market to growth a lot. Now it also depends on how different companies tap this opportunity.
Like US, in Europe also they can get that kind of certificate.
There is a certificate in Europe also. ED approval.
We are kind of chasing that.
Yeah, we are.
Because that itself also can be anything.
Yeah, correct.
And any size increase on the cable side, moving from 66 to let's say 220 kV kind of?
No, we are not focusing on that. We are focusing on where we are presently, and it is enough to be done in this space itself.
We'll see you after tomorrow. Sure. Pleasure. Thank you.
That's it. Good afternoon, everyone. If it's okay, I'll just take a very brief introduction about Apar Industries and what are the broad drivers for the company that we see, and then we can have your questions. So we are we manufacture products that are building blocks for the electricity infrastructure space. We manufacture conductors, cables, and oil, and most of these products goes for the transmission of electricity from one place to another place. We clocked a revenue of about 14,000 crore last financial year, about 50% coming from conductors, and about 20 to 22% was from cables, and about close to about 30% would be from oil. We have multiple products within each of these divisions. The conductor thing, if I have to just at a very broad level, if I have to look at the product portfolio, there are conventional conductors, there are high efficiency conductors. Again, high efficiency conductors are categorized as HTLS, high transmission, low sag conductors, OPGW, copper conductors. And very briefly, conductors are made of aluminum or copper that you see connecting to towers. It's typically, normally it's all overhead without any insulation, because if there is an insulation, then that conductor actually becomes a cable. So that's a very broad distinction between conductor and cable. In terms of cable range of products, we have power cables, and we also have very specialized special application cables which are used for solar, wind, shipping, mining, defense, railways, EVs, autos, etc. That's the range of cables that we have. And in terms of oil, we have the transformer oil. We have various other form of oil like rubber process oil, white oils, lubricants, and automotive oils. In terms of growth, what is driving growth in the last year and what we see likely to continue in future years, there are 2 or 3 different factors that actually contribute to the growth. One of it, very strong, comes from the space in the renewable energy forms. The sources of the generation of electricity from renewables is something that we see increasing over the years, which was not there, let's say, 5 years ago. But the kind of importance and generating electricity from renewable sources is seeing new targets, and is looking very favorable there. So that's one space that we see happening in the recent years, and that's something we look at even in the future. For a long term, we look at that form of energy would gradually be increasing. And in terms of the product, where it actually helps Apar is that for the renewable forms of sources of energy, the power needs to be generated at a particular source, typically where the strength is high. Like in case of solar power, it has to be where the sun is very bright, and similarly in the case of wind, where the wind is strong. But the place of distribution may be different. So you actually need to transmit the power from this place to this place, and that's where all the products where we are present are there. To take an example, in the case of, let's say, windmill, you need to, from the windmill, the power has to come to the ground. So there are different cabling intensity and cable products that are needed to bring the electricity from the windmill to the ground, and from there to the inverter, to the junction boxes, to the transformer, and then it has to go to the substation, and then you need an overhead conductor to transmit it from one place to another place, and finally it has to again go back to the place of distribution. So the intensity and the requirement of cabling infrastructure is very different than what was there in thermal setup over there. That's where we see opportunities in cable. We also see similar opportunities in conductors, because the renewable form of energy has to also be transmitted over long distance, and that's where conductor application is there. And in this process, you also need to at some time step up the voltage level and step down the voltage level. That's where a transformer is there. And wherever there is a transformer, there is a requirement of the transformer oil also. So you see that in this renewable form of energy, once it is getting more and more momentum, you will actually see solutions for cable, you see solutions for conductor, as well as solutions for the transformer oil. And we are actually present in all 3 segments. The other growth drivers that we see is in the area of public transportation and mobility. There is a lot of focus on public transportation. A lot of metros are getting developed in India, in Latin America, in countries like Australia. A lot of infrastructure is needed to develop that metro there. We are also seeing a lot of spends on the mobility space. Electric vehicles is something that we see promising over the years, and the kind of cabling solution needed in a charging station, cable that connects from charging station to your vehicle, the kind of cabling solution needed inside the vehicle is very different. So that's what we see growth opportunities in the public transportation and the mobility space. We are also seeing a lot of government of India initiatives, especially in terms of things like RDSS schemes and all, where the drive is to improve the distribution part of the structure over there, and cabling solutions are needed over there. So India is also seeing a increase in the kind of infrastructure needed in this space over there. We are also seeing a lot of things happening on the telecom front. With 5G getting rolled out and all countries are getting to this 5G, the kind of GB that a smartphone has to use is going to grow up much higher than what it was earlier. We are still a very small player in the telecom, but that's CVC as an opportunity going forward. And overall, if you see the kind of spend on infrastructure is going to increase. Be it in India, we talk about. In US, we have seen all this Inflation Reduction Act being signed in the US. India is going through a big infrastructure increase. With the spends going up on infrastructure, you will need the consumption and the spends happening more on power front. You need more of lubricants getting into it. So all in all, renewables, public transportation, mobility, telecom space, public infrastructure spends, also the schemes of the government are all the areas where you have growth happening. Apart from these macroeconomic factors, what is also happening in the geopolitical world is things like China plus one, where China used to be predominantly supplier of a lot of these products, and countries are looking at an alternative supplier base besides China. It's actually favoring India as a whole. It's also favoring a lot of industries, and we are also one of the industries likely to favor because of that. We're also seeing the impact of Russia-Ukraine war happening, and Europe opening to alternative forms of energy. So the macroeconomic factors are happening at one place, the geopolitical things are favoring us. These two things are the external influences that is helping us. And within Apar, there are a lot of things that is happening. We have also done so many changes in the last decade or so, because of which we are actually reaping the benefits of tapping the opportunities that is thrown up by this macro and geopolitical thing. For example, we have moved to premiumize we have more into premium category of products, especially the conductor division, which were more a standard product even 3-4 years ago. A large part of this division is now coming from premium products. About 40 to 45% of this portfolio is coming from premium products, which we are able to see clear margin rising. And as you see also in the results, that number has gone up. We are also getting into globalization. Our export mix is increasing gradually, and the export market is very different than the domestic market, both in terms of the quality of products that is needed, at the same time the pricing that you are able to command. So the margins, even for a standard product in India, may be less, but the same product, if we are able to export, it is able to get a much higher margins over there. So globalization is happening within Apar, premiumization is happening, and the last and the most important thing is continuous innovation. We are actually innovating a lot of products. By innovation, we mean we actually work with the customers to understand their problems, their requirements, and actually offer the solutions over there. So to give some examples, a lot of our people actually work with industries like shipping industry, defense industry, mining industries, because these products, the cables that is supplied, there are all special application products. These are not the usual power cables which are there. So once we are able to understand the requirement, we are able to design the product to to suit their requirement. So innovation has been happening continuously, and the premiumization, globalization, and innovation that is happening in Apar, plus the macroeconomic environment in terms of strong demand drivers coming up, plus a geopolitical thing that is favoring India, are all actually falling well in place for Apar. So some of it you have already seen in last year in FY23. We are actually seeing the results there, and many of it are likely to continue for a reasonable future.
Talked about the growth in the renewable energy, and so if you just can help us understand in terms of content per megawatt in say capex for relevant capex for us in thermal and in renewables. Is content per megawatt increasing?
So what is happening in the renewable is that more than the content, the renewable energy is more distributed than your thermal energy.
Even in case of thermal also, it was largely towards coal regions.
Yeah.
And then it was
But this will be further more distributed. So if you
Okay.
look at solar and wind, it's going to be further more distributed. And what will also happen is that the intensity will be very different. Like solar, you need string panels on top of the solar panels.
Right.
But then from there you need to take the power out and then transmit to the place of distribution where you need to ground the power, and then it has to go to a junction box, to an inverter box, then to a transformer and to a substation. Similarly, the windmill has to take the power from the top to the bottom. In some cases, you also have offshore wind. So it's there deep in the middle of the sea, and from there you need to take it back to the ground.
That is very far-fetched for India offshore. But even in just for our understanding, say in per megawatt of wind or per megawatt of solar, what is the capex which we can
So
address?
about a tower of wind, it's about a kilometer of wiring which is needed inside the windmill. About
Okay.
a kilometer of very special application wiring needed there, and also to bring it from top to the bottom, you need
Right.
about 200 meters, 300 meters of wiring. So one is a quantum. The second is these are very different. It's a completely the manufacturing design and the product is very different because the wire has to withstand so much of rotations that happens over there. So if you look at in India, we are the largest in terms of wind manufacturers, wind cable manufacturers.
Okay.
There's no other players because the manufacturing itself is a very different technological. It's a technical, more technical to say, but it's not something which is same as a power cable there.
Okay.
So we have about 70% more plus market share for the wind cables in India. Even solar would also be special applications. Even solar, we are the leaders in India. So there are these factors that are there.
In value per megawatt, say in case of solar, our addressable stuff will be like cables or conductors.
Actually, both. Renewables, as I said, you will need cables at some point of time, and even within cable, you will need the string cables somewhere else. Then you need light duty cables over there. Then you need underground cables at some point of time. Then you need overhead conductors at some places. You need to step up, step down. You need to transfer oil there. And these are just very broad. I'm talking about just to keep the discussion very simple.
Yeah, yeah.
Once you get into more technical aspects, the kind of variance within each cable will be different.
Okay.
So it could be multi-core, and it could be multiple areas which are. But just to keep a very broad thing, the point that I'm trying to say is that the intensity of cable will be very different for different renewable space application. The requirement will be much more because it's going to be more distributed, and the application would be for not only for cable, it could be for conductors, it could be wall, depending on the design of.
Could you talk a bit about the export market and what are the countries we are exporting to? What cost advantage do we have compared to other suppliers?
So the last 1 year, our exports in the US has increased, especially the cable division exports to the US has increased a lot, which was just about there in the second half of FY22. Because during COVID time, we actually took a lot of UL approvals. So to sell cable in the US, you need something known as the UL approval. And we have the maximum number of UL approvals for sale of cables in the US. So that's something that we did, and we were able to get the first more advantage for supply there. In FY23, we were the number one exporter of cable and wires from India. Our export in cables was about 25-30%, if I'm not wrong, 2-3 years ago. It's now almost 50% increase. Even conductor division, our export has gone up to almost as high as 50%. So the US is a big customer, and then we also have some customers in Australia. We also supply in Europe, and then is the distributor.
Can the base be defended and grown upon significantly? They got blocks of 3 to 5 years.
So we feel yes at this stage because of the macroeconomic factors that I talked about, plus the geopolitical scenario that we are facing. We feel that this would be there because the targets that each country is adopting on their to get into net zero by 2030, 2070 will need that forms of renewable energies. It will need that electrical mobility there. So we see a lot of external influences being there, and once that is there, the requirement of our products would be there. So as of now, we feel that cable, if you look at our business, it's still, although we have grown about 1,000 crore, if you look at the overall addressable market of cable, is actually nothing. The kind of cabling requirement which is there, world over. If you take some statistics of US, there were some reports. It says that US has actually imported about some $20 billion of cables in FY2021. So the kind of market which cable has is very, very big, and currently we are about 3,200 crore, though we have grown about 1,000 crore in the last 2 years, but the market is very big. So if you see the market perspective and also the growth factor that is coming from the renewables, from all these macroeconomic factors, we feel that it's going to be a long runway during this decade.
And what kind of cables are these, like in terms of kV?
Applications?
Less than 66 kV.
Less than 66.
KEA would be a competitor here.
KEA is there, Polycab is there, Finolex.
These are like orders driven, or you need to bid and then
Most
supply,
are
or
orders driven for us because we are largely into B2B. The B2C space is very less now. So a lot of it is order driven.
And how will be the current order book in terms of?
We have about 950 crore of order books in the cable.
Exports or total?
Total.
And out of that, exports will be
about 40% 45%. But it's a moving number, it keeps on coming. It's just order book at a point of time. It's actually continuous flow of.
The pipeline of bids, the pipeline of RFP, is that cascading at a fast pace?
Sorry, which pipeline?
The pipeline of bids, right? In the bid pipeline, because it's all RFP based, I'm presuming. So is that growing at a fast pace? I mean, any number you can share?
So we have given the order book here.
That's the order book.
What we are actually seeing is maybe a quarter or two there could be destocking happening in the US for our distributors, because what happened last year is that because of COVID pent up demand and because of all the supply chain inefficiencies were there, when the freight rates went off the roof and all, they wanted to have inventories at their warehouse and not look at transit time from multiple countries at 50 days, 60 day transit time. So they paid whatever price they could to fill up their warehouses last year, and that is something we feel that they are now looking at a de-inventorizing thing, wherein maybe a quarter or two there could be that impact of de-inventorizing, but long term looks good at this stage. So some of those orders we may have impact of de-inventorizing in a quarter or two in this financial year.
But given your base is small, like you said, on a large import book, this destocking should impact us because
it will impact us at least in the short term, especially a quarter or two, because this is happening across the US and across the industry. It is happening. It's not restricted. So last year they were actually because of pent up demand and need to fill up the warehouses, they are ordering more, and therefore in some cases you also see oversized margin last year. Especially if you look at the conductor business, we've also got somewhere above 50,000 per metric ton last year, which was also because of the fact that they were afford to pay whatever price they can to have the stocks in their product, which are something that may not happen in the future. The impact of this COVID pent up demand and giving high price may not happen in the future.
And these are generally fixed price contracts, or
Both fixed and variable.
Exports.
Yeah, yeah, variable. Even in India, we work on fixed and variable because aluminum is variable, and whether it is fixed or variable, we also ensure that we run a proper hedge book over there. So even if they are variable and some price are fluctuating, then we hedge it properly.
Yeah, because a year back our margins were impacted because of the raw material.
So it was actually the two things. One is that, another is that we were largely into a conventional product there. The product mix has changed completely in the last 2 years in the conductors.
Okay.
From what it used to be conventional conductors 3 years ago, about 45% in premium, and the other non-premium products also exported. You see the entire portfolio turning highly profitable.
Okay. And you see that mix and exports will continue.
It will continue, but some of the outlier margin that we got because of the US factors, that may not continue. Therefore, we have been looking at 25,000 plus tailwinds. Now, how much tailwind will come is what time will tell, because there is going to be a lot of spending in the US. The requirements of electrification would be there, so we will see order inflow coming from the US. But it may not be at such outlier margins that we got in FY23 because of the reasons, supply chain and freight issues and all. But still, those products would be a much better margin than what we used to sell in India for 3 years. And therefore, if you see 3 years ago, our conductor EBITDA per metric ton is about 8 to 10,000 per metric ton. Now we are looking at about 25,000 at the base level because the mix itself has changed. Plus, there could be tailwinds.
And how different it is within India and exports in terms of margins for the similar product?
It's completely different, because in India, if you sell the standard product, we may end up not getting any decent margins at all.
Okay.
Because it's just a price game. It's pure commodity price game. But in the export, they not only look at the product, they look at your reputation, they look at the capacity, how much you have, the commitment to delivery, the ability of the company to take risk management thing, hedging, whether companies do proper hedging or not. Because a lot of suppliers, they don't do hedging, and then if they are not able to get the proper price, then the delivery is affected. So that's where they look at a lot of these things besides just a price game, which happens in domestic.
And exports for conductors, with whom we compete?
There are overseas companies. There is a company, if I'm not wrong, in Bahrain somewhere. They also supply a product there. Medal Cables is there.
Okay.
And
for conductors.
Yeah, and there's a company in the US also, the Southwires.
Okay.
They are also.
And this change is largely because of increased opportunities in US?
As I said, the macroeconomic factors, there are 4 to 5 macroeconomic factors that I spelled out. That's a worldwide phenomenon.
Okay.
So just a couple of questions. So one is, in the domestic side, in this call, in the last call, there was a mention about the transition happening from ACSR to AL59. So if you can just highlight a bit on that opportunity, because I believe you, in the Indian market, we are almost like completely premiumized. So ACSR is a commoditized product. So is there any scope for us to improve our, EBITDA per ton over here?
So both ACSR and AL59 are still part of the conventional business that we have. But the difference is that AL59 is within that conventional thing. If you want to take a more better product, AL59 will be higher than ACSR thing. But still, both are conventional thing. The difference between the two is that ACSR has that steel component inside, and what it also does is that because of that, there is a risk to corrosion. Because these conductors are exposed outside, so it's exposed to corrosion. Whereas in the AL59, it's pure aluminium. So what it helps is that, one, it helps less corrosion. The second thing is that because it has all the aluminium, the conductivity actually improves more than that. Because the quantum, aluminium is a good conductor. Steel is not that. The steel is needed in that product. But here since we are eliminating steel, the overall conductivity improves. Now, we were actually selling AL59 all through, but the benefits of AL59 is what the transmission companies are now able to see now than what they used to see earlier. So it started with a few states, and over a period of time, a lot of other states are now part of this thing. So that's where we see opportunities in AL59. Having said that, the manufacturing of AL59 is not so easy as compared to the ACSR thing, and therefore there is very less competition in the AL59 space than in ACSR. So just to give some statistics, there are some 30 player competing in the ACSR. In AL59 could be just about 5.
So, but what is the volumes that you do out of the total, say 160,000 which you did last year?
About 10% would be AL59.
AL59, what about ACSR?
ACSR is coming down gradually. Could be maybe now less than 4-5%.
So basically, we have very no scope for improvement in the EBITDA per ton.
It will improve. The EBITDA will improve, but we see if this 10% is growing more, it will improve.
10% of the volumes.
Or total volumes, yeah.
Total volumes.
Yeah.
160.
So one, you will see that now if AL59 mix improves, your overall EBITDA even within the conventional will further improve.
But their scope is 5-6%.
No, so the more one is this thing. The other thing is that you'll get new orders, new transmission orders, and it will vary.
And secondly, like, I mean, we did 45,000 tons this year.
I'd order this coffee 2 hours before. Anyway, you can keep it. Yeah, tell me.
So 45,000 tons, so like a run rate of 180,000. So our capacity, are we constrained by that to grow to 180,000 and beyond that?
Yeah,
like,
we already have more than 2 lakh ton capacity.
Yes, already
have, and we are expanding also. So we have a capex program over the next 12 to 18 months, about 400 crores. About 25% will go to conductor.
So 2 lakh ton we already have, and then what are we going towards, like, with this?
About 250, 260.
250. So, but then, like, we talk about a range of 10 to 15% growth, and we did some 27% growth in the this quarter. So how do you explain just a 10 to 15%?
So I tell you, typically this conductor business, since it runs in so much of order books and all, quarter on quarter is not a good number to see, because what happens is that there's a lot of requirements in terms of specifications, and before we start manufacture, there's some audit needed, some testings are needed. Then after manufacturing, inspection is needed, and then the execution happens. So if you look at a quarter on quarter basis, it may not give a proper picture. You just need to look at a 12 monthly picture, because it depends on your how much you are able to execute in the quarter. That what depends. Suppose you are able to get permissions and testing fast, and you can even deliver more faster. So better what we look at is on a 12-month basis, because it's not like an FMCG retail where the order books, it's not an empty, it's more of an MTO.
One last question in terms of in this round of questions. So basically, our realization isn't the commodity prices coming down. The realizations are also declining, right? So 420,000 the last year, it went down to close to 4 lakh or so. So is that helping our interest cost, because we need to lock in lower amount of acceptances against that?
Yeah,
So that benefit will be coming.
Yeah, it will help, but all these interest costs are also getting passed on to the customers.
Right.
Though in the financial books I need to show interest separately, but when we calculate our pricing, interest is the main thing that we consider, because internally we look at interest just like my raw material.
Right, but this quarter we saw actually decline in the interest cost as compared to our EBITDA, let's say EBITDA. So that basically shows that the decline in the commodity prices and the.
So I'll tell you, there are in the interest cost, there are multiple areas which are there. One is your interest rate, which is there. The second is your rate of the commodity.
Is the biggest cost.
No, even there, within that the rate, two things. So one is on the acceptances, there could be your quantum of purchases happening in that particular period, and at what rate you are purchasing. So the rate fluctuates, this will fluctuate. If there are imports, then the exchange rate comes into the play. So there are so many things, and sometimes you also end up doing discounting of receivables, for which there is a cost associated with that. So there are actually multiple things that happens into this exchange rate, but directionally, yes, if your value of this comes down, interest will come down. But whether it comes down or not, the same thing is priced out to my customers as well. So accordingly, I just push it back to the customers.
Just on the guidance of 10 to 15% volume growth, are you seeing this for 3 to 5 years, or is this just for a year's guidance?
No, I think we're looking for a clear medium term at this stage.
3 to 5 years.
Yes. Could even be more depending on how the macro things pans out, but we are looking at it now.
And how do you split between domestic and export share, the 10 to 15%?
Well, I think both should be evenly around that level itself, because there's a lot of things happening in the domestic market also. with all these premium products in play. So what 10%? I think both we feel should grow in that proportion.
And margins are higher in exports by how much business price?
So now the products in exports and the product in domestic are not comparable. As I said, premium goes here and non-standard goes there. So it's just not comparable. And then each order has its own specification, technical parameters. So two products comparison may be very different.
You said premium products, you're saying AL59 or?
No, AL59 is still conventional.
Okay.
Premium products is HTLS. So just to explain HTLS, if you see, outside this, you go out in places in Mumbai, you have all these towers, and then you have this thing getting connected, which is a conductor, black conductor. Now, what is happening in cities where urbanization is happening, the requirement of electricity inside the city is increasing. And people want more electricity. Everything is turning. The requirement work from home is there. The standard of living is improving. DC conducting requirement is there. So you need more current in this Mumbai, whereas the flow of current happens from outside Mumbai, and it all happens through this this flow. Now, the two ways to do, if the electricity has to come to Mumbai, either you put more towers, like say these two are there, you put more towers and have new conductors there, by which you have to invest behind this infrastructure of towers, this tower and space. Both is not there. In Mumbai you don't have space and people don't want to spend more money on that. Instead of that, what you do, the existing conductor which is there, you actually take it out and put a HTLS line there. Now this HTLS line, what it does, it transmits much more power in the same infrastructure than what your conventional conductor was there. So with that, you're not touching the infrastructure, you're not touching the right of way, and the power requirement is met. Now it's not so simple as we say, because to manufacture this HTLS is a very different. It's a completely different ball game than the conventional conductors, because you need to see the design, how much current capacity it can take, and this tower is an old tower. So what is the strength of this tower? Whether it can take such a big load here or not? So that is different, and you need all this special stringing mechanism to connect this HTLS to the tower over there. These towers can go over railway lines or mountainous terrains and what kind of places, and you can't afford a power outages also there. So you possibly need to do this on a live wire reconducting. So these are some of the things which make this product very unique, very different. The manufacturing requirement capabilities of the HTL is also very different than the conventional. As of now, it's just we and Sterlite Power. We are the only two people who manufacture this thing. As of now, because of these things.
What is the penetration?
So this is something now it's increasing, because it started in cities and then it maybe grows into various places, because if there is a new line you can also do with standard conductors, but in cities where no infrastructure is there, that's where we see this application going.
And what is unique in this technology? What is unique?
So there is a composite core which is inside this this conductor, which you have licensed it from the US, and what the just in a very simple way, if I had to explain, the conductor has to be on top of it despite the high transmission. Otherwise what happens is with a very high transmission, if the conductor becomes like this, then you interfere with all the vehiculars and the people movement over there. So despite the high transmission, the conductors has to be rock steady on the top, and for that you need this composite core and the manufacturing capability. In a very simple way, I am trying to.
This license is exclusive to you, or
Yeah.
can you issue to anybody else?
As of now, we only have that.
There's a difference. Can they issue the license later to other people in India, or the India exclusivity on the license?
I need to check that. I'm not
And how long it is?
That I need to see that. But we have this currently we have, but specifically to that I'll have to.
This will be the only license.
So this license is for the core which is inside. So the core has to be inside this aluminium conductor, which actually holds the conductor on top.
Get them to understand that this license will be exclusive from this particular OE from the US. given that there are other peers in India also who do this, so there are other types of
There's
licenses.
no other player on
So
this.
in this code, we're the only person.
Plus Sterlite Power, as I mentioned. Because it's manufacturing, design and technical know-how is different than the conventional conductor, and therefore you see the premiumized role.
And the Sterlite has got from.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
How many people in the world can manage?
So it was done by China earlier. Chinese they had this thing. And that's where the premiumness actually comes.
When you mean primness, how much price over conventional?
That actually depends on the requirement of this thing. So whether this HTLS you can design carrying up to 10% more current, right up to 200 to 300% more current. So depending on what kind of requirement is there, your actually price and conductivity improve. So that's why there's no thumb rule there, because it depends on the application over there. And therefore our products, we cannot compare a standard versus premium product. What could be the difference? Because this question has been asked by us many people earlier. Because you can't compare that, because all MTO based, design specification based. There cannot be a thumb rule number that can be applied.
You can explain with one of the orders or one of the case, or what kind of orders you are getting, maybe 50% more, 30% more. What is the general kind of order, or it is again you're saying it is a specific?
It's all specific. Each orders are specific. Everything is MTO based. It's all make to order depending on the lines which are there, the infrastructure that is set up. So we cannot generalize that over there.
So other way to ask is in terms of economics, where it makes sense more in terms of replacing the entire structure versus doing this HTLS stuff.
Yeah.
In terms of cost, where it makes sense, 50%, 200%, 100%.
So where your infrastructure is already there and you don't want to expand that thing, you can't do that also because right of way is restricted, and you cannot put a new infrastructure in place. That's where HTLS is there. But suppose there's a plain area where you want to just put up the lines, there you can do even with the standard conductors.
And in terms of volume or share of our business right now from HTLS, how much it is?
It would be about close to about 50% of the premium products would be HTLS.
And rest 50 premium product is what?
It will be copper conductors that goes to railway electrification.
Okay.
We also have PGW also. So these products.
And any reason why we do not have too many cables and wires guys into conductor manufacturing?
So actually, world over there aren't any. Maybe I think one or two other companies. At least in India, there aren't any companies who have cable and conductors to enter. So I don't know the reason for that. In fact, the Apar actually started with the conductor division way back in 1958. Oil came in 1968 and cable was acquired in 2008. So that's how Apar has come. But I don't know why other companies have just grown in one vertical. That has been their core vertical. So this actually helps us in many ways because we feel that conductor is a raw material for cable. So we have a conductor making expertise also, that also goes with the cable thing, and this helps a lot for special application cables which are there. Where you need a particular insulation on top of a conductor. So this actually gives a synergy.
How different are the manufacturing for both, and are they even co-located, the conductors and cables?
So conductors, it's in a different place, though it's there around Silvassa. So in Silvassa, we have two conductor manufacturing plants, and the cable plant is about 40 minutes away from there, but it comes under Gujarat. But it's just about 40-45 minutes from. But it's not at the same place. It's a different.
And in terms of manufacturing, are the capacities fungible? Like if somebody is making cables, can they do it?
No, the conductor is completely different.
Help me with the.
So cables actually starts after conductor. So as I said, conductor is a raw material for cable. So conductors are aluminum or copper. There is no insulation. So you put an insulation on that Conductor, that's where it becomes a cable. That insulation has a different specification, polymer requirements that goes on the aluminum thing. So once a conductor gets completed, then it gets into the cable division.
And how much fungible is the domestic and export for cable segment?
In terms of manufacturing?
Yes, manufacturing capacity.
Capacities are a lot fungible, except this special application cable, of course, will be specially made. Solar and wind is completely different. But a lot of these power cables are fungible.
Okay. And what will be the breakup between power and solar?
So our, I would put it this way: our in cable division, the special application cable, which we call as elastomeric cable, which has solar, wind, shipping, defense, mining, it could be close to about 1/3 of the cable business.
Okay.
Then we have about close to 8 to 10% OFC, optical fiber. Then about 175 crore will be LDC, and the rest would be power cable.
Right. And the strong growth guidance that you've given, that rests on which segment?
Largely renewables. Renewables.
Renewables.
Renewables and elastomeric, and also power cables also. So that's where it is.
But largely export or domestic?
Both. Because we see growth drivers in export also happening and also domestic. Like as I said, schemes like RDSS and things coming up. EV, electrical vehicles, charging mobility is going up. So we see a lot of demand happening in the India front also.
But on the export side, how you see the demand in terms of slowdown from America?
Slowdown we feel is only for a quarter or two, because and that also because of this pent-up demand last year. So we just look at quarter or two, but if you look at the decade opportunity, looks bright overall. Because as I talked about this macroeconomic thing, the geopolitical things happening, plus various innovations and globalization that we are doing in Apar, if you combine all three, the decade opportunity looks strong for us.
So when you say quarter or two, do you see the inventory destocking stabilizing?
In the US may happen, yeah. And therefore our primaries may get affected.
And what's the outlook on the oil segment? Because that's more like a commodity-ish kind of business.
So oil, I would say the 1/3 oil is about transformer oil, which is used in transformers and also used in various applications of this transmission line. So wherever you need to step up or step down, you need transformers, and therefore transformer oil is it. So this part, 1/3 part of our business will go linear as like the conductor division and the cable division. Then you have lubricants that goes into industrial lubricants, automotive lubricants. So depending on industrialization and growth in the country, you will see that industrial oil picking up. But automotive will also grow up, but largely it goes to the tractor for the lubricants. But at some point in time, because of EV, we'll see that at long term we may see that kind of a decline there. But the industrial oil and transformer oil is something that we are bullish. So overall, we are looking about oil growth about 5%
But
volume.
volumes have been tepid in this.
Yeah, about 5% volume growth is what we are looking for this going forward.
5%. And margins?
Margins would be in the range of 5,000 to 6,000 per KL. Because oil is something that we cannot hedge. So, some quarters it could be high, some quarters could be low. So on an average, 5,000 to 6,000 per kiloliter.
And if you look at the return on capital in this business, how would you, these would be depreciated plants?
Yeah, so oil does not need a lot of capex also.
Right.
And, we just working in 2 shift, we can just increase capacity by working into the 3rd shift. So we don't expect too much capital in oil. So in terms of ratio, it will be much higher. But in terms of share of profit, it may be low because cable and conductor in the absolute share of profit may be high. And yeah, conductor and cable is where we'll see a lot of capex happening.
And what is the utilization in this?
Where?
Oil?
Oil, as I said, we just done about 250. So their utilization could be about 85-90%.
85-90%.
At some point, would you look at demerging this?
See, today it actually gives us synergy because, as I said, the 1/3 of the oil is completely synergic with that. So if you get, let's say, an order for cable or a conductor, we actually pass on that information to the oil team because there's a transmission line there. At some point, you need transformer oil over there. It actually helps one synergy across the division. The second thing is that oil gives a very good cash profit, cash cow, which is able to fund the capex of conductors and cable. So it actually helps us in the cash part of it because you don't need capex over there.
Right.
It's a free cash flow that comes and it actually funds your cable and conductor capex.
And these growth is in lubricant alone or
Across the oil.
transformer oil is not seeing
It may be higher than that thing. So I can see higher both in tea oil and maybe some of the other categories of oil may see a reduction. So average you're looking at about 5 or 4.
in transformer oil we have mineral and natural.
Yeah, mineral. Natural is much less. It's largely mineral.
We look at synthetic also.
So we have this natural based oil, but the volume is much low.
There's no demand in. But export
Because
is
it's no price thing. So we have a product, but it's going to take time for all this ESG awareness and everything to come. It's a biodegradable natural based oil.
But exports are in demand in that.
Not that much currently. But we have some approvals are in pipeline, but the volume is very less as compared to the overall.
And synthetic are the exploring the future.
So it's largely these products only.
Transformer, what is the replacement cycle generally?
Replacement could be as high as 15-20 years also.
15-20 years. So all has to be driven by the new demand.
But also, you may have old transformers and repeat demand can also keep on coming, plus new transformers. The other thing is that new application, as I talked about, renewables, that's where this.
Renewables, is it increasing?
Renewables is increasing.
No, the usage of this, does it increase in renewables?
In the entire spectrum, it would be there. So no, see, this doesn't get used in the solar or windmill anywhere. But as I said, the place of generation and place of distribution, somewhere in middle, you have to step up or step down. That point of time, you need a transformer, and therefore a transformer. So we supply this all to the OEM transformer.
And some weakness that you're seeing in the short term in the cable export market. So, but at the same time, the domestic is doing really well, right? We're seeing some of the peers running out of capacity to cater to the demand. So, do you think that should be able to offset at least some part of?
Yeah, we feel that because the domestic demand looks robust and therefore we have not changed the guidance. What we've been continuing the guidance earlier, we are not looking at changing the guidance because we feel that some of the other domestic demand could be there. And as I said, the thing that is driving these macro factors are not limited to a particular geography. It's a pan global level. So we are actually seeing the order inflows from across different countries over there. So US in particular has a de-inventorization, but we'll see that domestic demand. I think at this stage we feel that it should be able to take care of it.
Right. And the mid-20s growth guidance there for cable segment, that's also for the medium term?
Yeah.
Okay.
25% growth, you look at it clearly for the medium term.
So medium term 3 to 5 years.
Could be even more, but at this stage we have this visibility. We don't know, it depends on how every year countries execute things, but as of now we look at there's a clear visibility.
It's volume growth, right? 25.
Cables, we are looking at value. There are too many products, we don't give a number on the At this stage, you look at value growth of 25%.
But will it change with copper pricing change?
It may, yeah. To that extent, it could change.
And in terms of our raw material consumption basket, in terms of say copper, aluminum, how it is total basket, if you want to break it broadly.
Basket, not exactly aware of the number there, but exactly I need to quantify that.
But in terms of disclosure, I think tonnage is a more appropriate language of disclosure.
Yeah, so if you look at our conductor, we have tonnage, but cable, what happens that the number of products involved is much more than conductors. So each product has its own requirements over there. So that's why we have been reporting on a value basis there. But conductors, if you see, everything is a tonnage, and we also talk about EBITDA per metric ton. There is no percentage to sales. The numerator, the thing that rises is a per metric ton number. Even oil, we look at kilo KL and the EBITDA per KL. It's just the cable because the number of products are so huge. So it's a value base.
In cable, in terms of margins, how should one look at it?
We are looking at about 10 to 12% margins, EBITDA margins.
In terms of capacity that you're putting in the cable, how much would that be? You would be looking at that in terms of tons, right?
Values?
No, but the capacity that you're putting, how much capacity?
So the asset turns we expect about 1:7, 1:8 times.
Okay, but we can't say in how much metric tons or something.
Cable would be 50 odd crores, and it take about 8.
CapEx yours.
Yeah. Out of 400 crores, about 2/3 would be cable.
Sorry, how much is it?
2/3.
2/3.
Out of 400 crore, 2/3 would be cable. About 1/4 would be conductors. The rest would be maintenance and.
And when will that operationalize? It's expanded to that.
About 18 months. Take about 18 months, 12 to 18 months.
Oh. And you do have enough capacity to cater to 25% growth for the next year.
Yeah.
Oh.
And it's
the last 5 minutes. Our cable business is more, you said B2B, whereas competitors are focused on B2C. Where do you see the growth coming in from B2B for you, and why not more B2C?
It's largely, as I said, renewables, public transportation, mobility. Those are the areas where B2B growth we see. We have a B2C product also in the cable and wire. We have Apar Anushakti, which it's a different product than what is available in the market. It can carry 50% more current. It is melt resistance. We claim it. We have a 50-year life of the product. So we have a very unique and differentiated product which no other player in India has, I think. But the scale is very small. But we thought of entering into the wire segment with a different product than to be the same product which is there in the market. So this USP is what we are trying to build on that thing, and we are giving demos to a lot of influencers, electricians, and once they see the difference with this and other products, then the success rate of buying is much higher. That's what we have seen.
So is this a new category itself?
It's a LDC, the same LDC, but the product is different than the one that is there in the market. It's an E-beam irradiated wire.
And what is the growth that you're seeing in this?
So we are growing. FY23 we had turnover of 175 crore. FY22 we were about 100 crores. Before that we were about 60 crores. We are targeting to reach about 500 crores by FY26. We were largely there in 2 states 2 years before. Now we're already into 13 states, planning to go to 17 states. The retail presence, the number of distributor presence is increasing. The demos that we are showing to them is increasing. We have a new brand ambassador. Sonu Sood was a brand ambassador, and we went on air first time in the Women's Premier League. So, and it's going to be a separate team who are going to look at this particular part of it, in terms of channel expansion, distribution, and all. Whereas the B2B team will be different.
Do you see this eating into the market share of the polycaps and the areas?
Yeah, but it's still a very small number at this stage. 175 to 500 is very small as compared to Indian LDC market size of some 25,000 crore. It's going to be small in terms of market share, but we'll have slowly our presence building up over times to come.
Is there a top line endeavor so by 26 you want to share on this segment, the B2C?
B2C, as I said, FY26 about 500 crores is what we expect. It's our target to reach to 500 crores by FY26.
And what are margins like in something like that?
So margins are there, but it also gets invested into all this BTL activities, and also channel expansion, which so currently you are focusing on this building the channel over there. The small segment where margins they are not trying to so much protect, but trying to invest more in terms of awareness, because people need to know this product is different than the other product, for which you need to do a lot of demos, a lot of meets, influence. A lot of time what happens is that the person who is buying this electric product are not the owners. They give it to your electricians to do that thing. So you need to educate the influencers how this product is different. In case of people who are owners of bungalow and all, there people we show the demo to them.
And how much more expensive is it compared to an ordinary?
About 2 to 3% expensive. But in terms of value, it's much different. Because when people see that it can carry 50% more current, it's more safe to use. once you're put inside the house, then you don't need to worry about it. Because what's going to happen is that your requirement of electricity in the household is going to increase with more and more requirement. And so, wire that can carry 50% more current would always be better now to put. If you're going to change your house and doing rewiring, paying few money extra and getting a much higher quality is much better now than once you have concealed everything. Then again you demolish your house and etc. So these are our USPs and selling points. That
and you don't see competition working on something similar?
Theoretically they can come, but they are already at such a scale. We don't know if they want to get into this EV route of business or want to continue the way they are. For us, the scale is very small, so we actually started with that only. So it's easier to have that unique differentiator. Other companies are already giants in that space.
And for cables, with elastomeric, B2C, etc., growing higher, is there a possibility that 10 to 12 could be revised upwards moving forward in time?
So we'll revise it as we progress it. We also need to see how it will fit into that thing, and of course we'll get synergies as the volume grows up in future. But as of now, we see this as a realistic.
Right, but in medium term, there could be an upward bias to that.
There could be. We always get synergies, as you see manufacturer. But now, first we need to test it. If we are able to see that happening, then only we can revise that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.